Late one night, Kim Woojin finally manages to fix a stubborn bug that troubles him for weeks. He has just completed the route of a secondary character called Daekulane von Grahan Ukline. Daekulane is an intermediate boss in the game and also one of the named villains. Woojin has to fix countless errors because he wants to make sure the game is fully optimized so that no matter which route the player chooses, Daekulane's death is unavoidable. After working tirelessly and grinding for hours to complete this task, his ex-girlfriend suddenly walks in. She is not only his former partner but also the team leader of the development team. Woojin enjoys some good moments with her when they are together, but their relationship eventually falls apart as their personalities clash too strongly. He is lazy, often wasting time by procrastinating, while she is an ambitious workaholic who puts her entire focus into her career. Ironically, her drive and ambition even help him become a somewhat better version of himself, though in the end, their romance still comes to a painful end. No matter how much she tries, he is unable to change his bad habits, and so they break up. 6 months later, Woojin hears that she already has someone new in her life. That night, as she notices him working on the character Daekulane, she casually drops a shocking revelation that Daekulane's design is based on Woojin himself. Even the villain's traits, skills, and personality match him almost perfectly. Just as she is about to explain further, she suddenly realizes her current boyfriend is waiting for her outside, and so she quickly leaves. Woojin checks the clock and it is nearly 2 a.m., yet he is still testing Daekulane repeatedly to make sure everything runs smoothly. He dislikes the idea that Daekulane is designed to resemble him. In the game's backstory, when Daekulane is a child, he is celebrated as a magical genius and raised on a pedestal. But the truth is that he is completely average and far from exceptional. His arrogance, paired with his noble family background, twists him into someone with one of the worst personalities imaginable. Daekulane's character is so corrupted that calling him human almost feels too generous. As the story of the game moves forward, Daekulane grows stronger, but he is always hated by those around him, even when they need him. At this point, Woojin decides to give the character another defining trait, something unique and special that only Daekulane will have. Because the villain is inspired by him, he chooses to add an attribute called comprehension. Not only that, but Woojin secretly adds several of his personal favorite attributes: wealth, the Midas touch, sharp eyesight, and an Iron Man. Once he finishes stuffing Daekulane with these powerful traits, Woojin realizes he may have gone too far. Panicking at the thought of breaking the balance of the game, he quickly resolves to undo the changes and restore Daekulane to the way he is originally designed, since the last thing he wants is another critical bug appearing right before the release date. But just as he is about to revert the character, he suddenly receives a strange text message telling him to look outside. When Woojin steps to the window, he sees a massive hole opening in the sky. Before he can process what is happening, a bolt of lightning strikes down toward him. The next moment he regains consciousness, he finds himself inside the very game world he has created. Several days pass, and he already possesses the body of Daekulane, the man doomed to die no matter what path the story follows. Just then, Daekulane's sister storms into the room and begins scolding him harshly for lazing around instead of doing his duties as a respected professor. She is furious that he is still locked away in his room moping about some woman, and in her anger, she dumps a tall stack of documents on his desk that Daekulane is supposed to complete. Before leaving in a grumpy mood, she warns him one last time to get his act together, declaring that she will not allow him to disgrace the reputation of their family. At first, Woojin thinks everything happening is just some twisted dream, but as the days go by, the sharp, realistic feeling of this new life makes him accept that it is real. He still isn't sure if this is some kind of afterlife since he dies after being struck by lightning, but what he does know is that he has become the villain of the game he once creates, Daekulane von Grahan Ukline. For anyone who forgets, Daekulane is the mid-boss of the story, the root cause of problems, hated by everyone, and destined to inflict pain on countless characters before being destroyed. The biggest problem is that Woojin has no idea which part of the storyline he has been thrown into, and the only thing he can measure clearly is how much mana he has, though he doesn't know how fast it will drain. He isn't exaggerating when he recalls how during development this character is tested thousands of times and manages to survive only once, because Decollane is created purely to die. Looking over the papers his sister throws at him before leaving, Woojin learns her name is Yariel von Grahan Uklein, his half-sister who now leads House Uklein in his place, though their relationship as siblings is nothing close to normal. Decollane also has a fiancée named Julie, and the way Yariel speaks about her with disdain makes Woojin think something unpleasant has happened between them. As he checks the documents more carefully, he discovers a contract that reveals he has already been hired as Professor Decollane at the Imperial University, where he is expected to teach basic magic and mana control. With no choice but to accept, he decides that even if he has no teaching experience, it is a chance to step out into the world and gather information about his situation. Suddenly, a system notification appears before his eyes, stating that his main survival goal is to become a necessary part of the game, while his side quest is to deliver a lecture. Completing it will reward him with 0.5 store currency. He remembers how some routes lead to Decollane's death by Yariel's hands, and so he resolves to complete this mission, knowing the currency will be important. He has no idea what topic he is supposed to cover, but thanks to the comprehension skill he gives Decollane before being transported here, he figures he can handle any subject as long as he has mana to activate it. While changing into formal clothes to prepare, he notices how different everything around him is compared to his old life, yet he moves naturally, as if he has lived as Decollane his whole life. Even the clothes which would once make him feel awkward, now feel elegant and comfortable, an effect of Decollane's attributes of intimidation, dignity, and aesthetic sense. It is almost as if Decollane's body is allowing him to blend in completely. Woojin also notices he no longer feels the urge to speak rudely, and the strict formal behavior that once feels burdensome now comes naturally. On his way to the lecture, he can't help but feel like he truly belongs to this aristocratic world, a stark contrast to his past life as an average lazy man in South Korea who is dumped by his girlfriend. Now, inhabiting Decollane's body, he wants to embrace the role of a noble. When he enters the luxurious car prepared for him, he remembers that in his old world he has never experienced such comfort, except for seeing his ex's boyfriend flaunt an expensive car. Suddenly, he notices a boy sitting beside him, who nervously greets him and hands over documents. Woojin wonders if the boy is an assistant or secretary, but when he asks, the boy is shocked because he has been serving Decollane for 3 years already. Checking the documents, Woojin realizes they aren't lecture notes he prepares but rather a fully written script, since Decollane would never have done the work himself. Clearly the boy writes everything. Woojin decides to thank him, and the boy is stunned to hear even a small compliment. Even the driver is shocked, since Decollane has never spoken kindly before. Strangely, Woojin's body reacts negatively to praising someone, making him feel ill, which only reminds him how awful Decollane's true personality is. He even feels that same repulsion earlier when leaving the manor, as though Decollane's consciousness is trying to resist him. After a short ride, they reach Imperial University, full of energy and bustling students. According to the documents, he is supposed to lecture in Roteo Hall, so he makes his way there. When he arrives, he sees the students already seated, waiting eagerly for the class to start. Despite his reputation as a cruel villain, they look forward to learning from him because of the rumors of his mastery in spell interpretation, which once earns him the title of child prodigy. Entering the hall, Woojin introduces himself formally as Decollane von Grahan Uklein, head professor of the university's magic tower, and begins the lecture. Many female students are clearly enchanted by his intimidating presence and handsome looks, but one young woman stands out. She looks at him with open hostility, seeing him not as a professor but only as her father's enemy, a worthless piece of trash she can never respect. To see why she hates him so much, we go back almost 3 years, when her father ends his own life after his thesis on spell interpretation is stolen, leaving him in despair. The man who takes credit for it and is praised as a genius is none other than Decollane, and because of him she loses her father, her home, her family's lands, and is left an orphan with nowhere to turn, so she swears she will take revenge no matter what. Determined to keep that vow, she forces her way into the Empire's Royal University where Decollane taught, hiding her anger while waiting for the chance to reveal that his celebrated skills are nothing but stolen work that belongs to her father. and she cannot stand to watch him hold the position that should have been her father's legacy. Still, she knows she cannot act recklessly, so she bides her time, planning carefully. Meanwhile, Dekulin takes the attention of the lecture hall again, announcing himself as the head professor of the magic tower and a monarch mage with control over the elements before starting the lesson. He begins with the basics of magic, explaining that attributes are its origin and source, while elements form the objects around them, and he goes on to list the 9 types: summoning, spirits, destruction, support, enchantment, manipulation, ductility, bewitchment, and harmony. As Woojin continues reading from the prepared script, he realizes teaching is easier than expected, even though it is his first time and he knows little of magic theory, because he understands everything clearly thanks to his comprehension skill, and the students are drawn to him by Deculane's natural charisma and elegant presence, which even makes strict eye contact and formal mannerisms feel smooth rather than heavy. For a moment, he wonders if Dekulane might truly possess the qualities of a great teacher. Returning to the lecture content, he explains how mana can be stored in different ways. Mages often keep it in their heads to make spellcasting easier. Knights store it in their hearts to release through their blood, and some use the inner core, which blends inner and outer mana and is the most versatile method. In short, effort is necessary, but without natural ability one must choose a path carefully. Woojin reflects ironically on this, knowing Deculane's mana is only around 3,500, a weak pool compared to great mages who hold as much as 30,000, making it strange that he is lecturing students about dedication when he himself lacks talent. Still, he finishes the lesson but hesitates over one final line, asking if any students have questions, something the real Dekulane would never have done. And though he feels relieved when the hall stays silent, the moment is broken when the very girl who despises him rises to speak, bringing up a strange spell found in the dormitories the night before, thought to be the work of the devil, and asking his opinion. But before addressing her question, Dekulane sharply scolds her for breaking etiquette by failing to state her name and affiliation first. Dekulane refuses to answer someone who doesn't even follow basic classroom manners, and though he pretends it's about etiquette, the truth is that he doesn't have enough strength left to respond. Since his comprehension skill eats up enormous amounts of mana and he only has about 2,000 left out of his original 3,375. Even reading the lecture script earlier costs him 300, so he's unsure how much more would be required to analyze a completely unfamiliar spell. The students laugh quietly, thinking the girl embarrasses herself trying to get the professor's attention, while she feels the sting of humiliation but stubbornly presses on, explaining that the magic tower refuses to investigate, dismissing it as rumor, and asks him to examine the mysterious spell found in the dorms, even casting it in front of him. With no way out, Dekulane uses his comprehension skill, burning through about 1,700 mana, and then states firmly that it is barrier magic, specifically a bewitchment type meant to trap people inside the dormitory, shocking her with his immediate answer before brushing her off and ending the matter. With the side quest complete, he gains his promised store currency and the scene shifts to the university cafeteria, where the girl, Ephorine, eats in frustration, still reeling from the embarrassment. Her only intention has been to reveal Dekulane as a fraud, but instead she is humiliated, though she remains convinced that he simply blurts out random nonsense. Bewitchment magic, after all, is known to be extremely complex and normally requires multiple parameters, so his quick declaration without details seems fake, especially since what she shows is only a direct copy of the unknown magic circle drawn on the dormitory door the night before, which has become research material for new students. Certain she has proven him wrong, she is stunned when a friend rushes in with news that collective research confirms the circle really is a barrier spell, exactly as Dekulane says. Still unwilling to believe it, Ephorine insists he gets lucky and refuses to accept him as a true master of spell interpretation, even as her friend showers Dekulane with praise and thanks her for asking the question that no one else dares to raise. Bitter and unconvinced, Ephorine grows even more frustrated that her attempt to shame him only makes him look more impressive, cementing his reputation among the students as a brilliant professor. Furious but determined, she begins studying documents on Deculane's past achievements, reminding herself of the old saying, "If you know both your enemy and yourself, you will never lose." With that thought, she resolves to prepare carefully so that one day she can destroy his reputation completely. Daekyulin is still unsettled by what happens in the classroom, fearing the worst, because the instant he looks at that spell his comprehension skill activates on its own, draining nearly all of his mana as the twisted lines of the circle consume him, and even after sacrificing everything he has, he cannot make sense of it, knowing that even if his mana were doubled it still would not be enough, though for now he feels relieved things turn out in his favor. As he walks ahead, his path is blocked by a woman in shining white knight armor with white hair and pale eyes, Julie von Diafrieden, his fiancée and a character destined to become the greatest knight, someone he instantly recognizes from his own game. Though he doesn't expect to meet her so soon, he greets her politely and says he is fine, but Julie doesn't believe him, accusing him of breaking a promise made a week earlier. Wu Jin, having no idea what she means, tries to avoid trouble by brushing it off, but Julie blocks him again, refusing to let him leave without an answer. He repeats himself, blaming a fever for his memory loss and asking her to remind him. The scene then flashes back. A week ago, Julie promises that if he drops his arrogance and admits the truth to everyone, she will stay by his side no matter what. Back in the present, Julie is close to tears, questioning whether she trusts the wrong man. But she steps aside to let him pass, and he leaves without a word, frustrating her further though she stays silent. Their engagement has never been about love but about convenience, as the powerful Enclave and Frighten families think the union of a mage and a knight will expand their influence and dominance, so no one opposes the match. Later, however, both families realize that Daekyulin's supposed talents are false, his reputation as a genius mage nothing more than lies, even though he rises to be the youngest professor at the Magic Tower. Eventually, news spreads of his decline, and though he stops producing results afterward, both families choose to hide the truth to avoid gossip or scandal. Julie, however, cannot accept it. Though she agrees to a loveless marriage, she cannot endure lies that clash with her knightly principles. She thinks Daekyulin promises to honor honesty, but now it feels like yet another deception. To give context, the Imperial University is the Empire's best school, its magic department the most prestigious of all, while the Magic Tower is the ultimate institution of magical practice, comparable to a national hospital alongside a top medical school. Wu Jin can't help but admire the grand look of the campus, with its carefully kept gardens that remind him of an American university, a place he and his team work hard to design, though he regrets being stuck in Daekyulin's body instead of someone else's. As he walks, he suddenly bumps into someone trailing him closely, scattering a pile of papers across the ground. It's his assistant, Alan, who has been rushing to deliver documents. Back in the office, Alan presents them properly, explaining their sponsorship lists for this year's new mages. The Magic Tower works like a research institute in the real world, relying on funding, and professors sponsor the apprentices they see potential in. Looking over the files, Daekyulin notices one name glowing in gold, revealed by his attribute Wealthy Magnate, which gives him uncanny instinct for profitable ventures, and when combined with sharp eyesight, lets him see candidates destined to bring fortune. Among the highlighted names, the one shining brightest is Ephraim Luna, the very girl determined to ruin him. Though she has no sponsors because others fear offending him, her talent is undeniable, especially since she learns magic on her own without formal schooling. Ironically, Daekyulin's skills identify her as his greatest opportunity for prosperity, even though in the game she is his enemy, seeking revenge for her father's death and tied to his many fated downfalls. He reflects on his cursed attribute Villain's Fate, which makes the world hate him and ensures he eventually dies, by sword, poison, or assassination, but also grants him strength each time he survives an attempt. Realizing that survival depends on making choices different from the original Daekyulin, he resolves to sponsor Ephraim despite the risk. After signing the papers and instructing Alan to submit them, he also requests a list of books to be borrowed. Alone later, he thinks about how critical money will be for survival, since many of his scripted deaths can be avoided simply with enough wealth. Investing in talented mages is one way to secure resources, but he knows it won't be enough. as countless enemies in this world would kill him if given the chance, meaning the only true path to survival is to gather as much wealth and power as possible. Wu Jin wants to grow stronger, yet he cannot forget that Dekulane's natural abilities are only average, and without finding a way to improve himself, he knows survival is nearly impossible given the many threats drawing closer each day. What gives him hope are his unique attributes. Though he likes to claim he can control all four elements, the truth is he can only truly work with earth and fire. But when those combine with metal, they form his rarest skill, the Midas Touch, which consumes mana to unlock hidden potential in whatever he targets. Alongside this, his ability to control metal grants him the use of levitating blades guided by keys, which sound like an impressive invention but in reality are simply a variation of telekinesis, something almost unknown and poorly understood in this world. If he can at least learn the basics of manipulation magic, he will be able to rely on metal objects to make up for his lack of pure magical strength. With that in mind, he activates his comprehension skill and absorbs every piece of knowledge written in a book about telekinesis. Once finished, he tests it immediately, raising a pen into the air with ease, and thanks to his memorize attribute, he can cast the spell directly without needing an incantation. Even though it is only an entry-level spell, the power it carries is already considerable, and he can hardly imagine what advanced telekinesis might allow him to accomplish in the future. His next idea is to engrave magic circles onto his own body, since in this world the larger the circle, the greater the power. Using his comprehend skill, he studies his whole body, mind, heart, and inner core, before attempting to cover himself with marks to strengthen telekinesis. The risk is that his body could collapse under the strain, but with his Iron Man attribute, which provides him with top-tier physical endurance, he is confident he can withstand the side effects. The moment he begins engraving, unbearable pain surges through him, every bone feeling shattered and every muscle ripped apart. But he holds firm, not making a sound, enduring it with the composure expected of a noble. When it finally ends, he realizes he has failed because of lacking mana, left with only 1 point, but at least one circle is carved onto his shoulder. At this pace, it will take him roughly 2 weeks to cover his entire body. A month later, after his seminar, the official first day of lectures at the Magic Tower arrives. Students gather at a remote site prepared for their lessons, only to find a notice board from the professor saying they must prove their skills alone in an area filled with natural elements. Many are shocked that he abandons them so suddenly, but none is more irritated than Ephorine, who curses him quietly under her breath. While she stews, another girl deliberately bumps into her, and when she turns, she is stunned to see Sylvia von Josephine Elaide. Their eyes meet briefly before Sylvia walks away coldly, pretending she doesn't even know her. Later, while Ephorine tries to focus on her work, her thoughts remain stuck on the encounter, convinced Sylvia is from House Elaide, the same family that a decade ago surrounds her home with soldiers to threaten her. For Sylvia to pretend ignorance makes no sense. Distracted, her structure falters, and she feels a heavy pull in the air draining her mana. Looking around, she sees Sylvia calmly shaping an immense construction, 1,000 times greater than her own, its turbulence destroying her progress completely. Furious at being overshadowed and ignored, Ephorine grows even more enraged as Sylvia continues without acknowledging her at all. To draw her attention, she insults Sylvia, mocking her strength, remembering their rivalry from the past when Sylvia constantly pressures her to quit magic so she can surpass her. Yet Sylvia still denies her, claiming not to recognize her and saying she only hears of the death of a foolish noble. Hearing this insult against her father ignites Ephorine's rage, and without hesitation she leaps into the air, her fist clenched and wrapped in magic, ready to strike Sylvia and determined to make her regret every word. Ephorine, furious over Sylvia's vile insult toward her late father, lunges forward with a heavy strike, but Sylvia quickly conjures a barrier, her eyes betraying doubt in her own strength, and their collision produces a violent boom that sends strong waves across the students, knocking them off balance. As the dust clears, Ephorine is revealed, clutching Sylvia's head with her left hand while shouting in rage, but her fury is interrupted when she notices a strange dark light forming at the site of their mana clash. The students scream as the black sphere grows, warping space and threatening to explode, and Ephorine realizes the danger. If it detonates, Fragments will scatter like deadly shrapnel, killing everyone nearby. She struggles desperately to contain it, but then suddenly the noise and crushing pressure vanish. Opening her eyes, she sees a tall man in elegant noble clothing standing before them. It is their professor, Dekulain, who saves them by instantly freezing the fragments with ice magic and then manipulating them with telekinesis. His display of power and grace leaves the students breathless, awed by the beauty of the magic, even Ephraim, who recognizes the use of enchantment but is still captivated by its brilliance. With the shards removed, Dekulain declares the lecture over, glaring harshly at Sylvia and Ephraim and ordering everyone else to leave except the two responsible. Ephraim's expression makes it clear she knows she is in deep trouble. Soon after, the scene shifts to an interrogation room where Dekulain sits with the chairwoman, Adeline Segelian, awaiting Professors Retlan of Spirit Studies and Relan of Support Studies. Once gathered, they begin discussing the incident, focusing on the daring act of a nameless student striking a member of the powerful Iliad family. Ephraim is immediately judged as worthless due to her background, while Sylvia is automatically cast as the victim, though it is only because of Dekulain's intervention that disaster is averted. Knowing the bias in the room, Dekulain realizes the outcome is predictable. Sylvia, daughter of an influential house, will be defended, while Ephraim, a fallen noble reduced to nothing more than a commoner, will be condemned. Still, he feels compelled to involve himself, sensing the scarlet energy radiating from Ephraim, a sure sign of the attribute villain's fate, which means the world itself wants her gone. For someone like him, fated for death, ignoring this only pushes him closer to his own end. The disciplinary meeting officially begins, and Professor Relan immediately lashes out at Ephraim, accusing her of reckless behavior that endangers countless lives, stressing that only Dekulain's timely actions prevent catastrophe. Ephraim, slumped with defeat, responds that she cannot explain her reason for attacking, a vague answer that only offends the professors further. Yet she refuses to reveal the truth, because above all else, she is determined to hide her true intentions from Dekulain, the man she considers her ultimate target. Sylvia's cutting words echo in Ephraim's mind, yet even if they are true, she cannot risk speaking out in front of the one man she has marked as her true enemy, so she endures the humiliation in silence, holding to her long-term plan. Professor Retlan roars again, accusing her of having an inferiority complex and drilling into her the difference between nobles and commoners. When Sylvia is asked to explain, she downplays the conflict, claiming she accidentally ruins Ephraim's work and that an argument follows, making her look like the innocent one in front of the committee and making Ephraim's actions seem even more irrational. The professors then press Ephraim, questioning if she has anger issues, and Retlan even recommends her expulsion, saying a warning is not enough. With no one speaking for her, she feels completely isolated, every scolding aimed at her, unable to reply, weighed down by the loneliness of having no father and no ally. In her heart she blames Dekulain, directing her grief and helplessness toward him like a child. At last, the chairwoman Adeline speaks, saying all the professors seem to share the same opinion, but before deciding she wants to hear Dekulain's account. Ephraim braces for expulsion, convinced her fate is sealed, but to her shock Dekulain turns the attention onto Sylvia, arguing that she too shares fault. His words stun both girls, and even Retlan, who dismisses Ephraim as worthless, is caught off guard. Dekulain continues, pointing out that Sylvia could have prevented the escalation yet chose not to, questioning whether the famed skills of the Iliad house fail her in the moment. Sylvia falters, lowering her head and admitting she deliberately lets the attack happen so Ephraim would be punished. Ephraim is left in disbelief, unable to grasp why her sworn enemy would speak in her defense when he has no reason to. Retlan protests, claiming Sylvia's fault is small since she is the victim, and blame rests with Ephraim, but Dekulain pushes back, declaring that as a professor he is the one who fails by designing a lecture that does not require his presence, suggesting he should bear the responsibility. His unexpected statement flusters Retlan, who had sided with Sylvia, and shocks Ephraim further as she watches him argue fiercely for her. Finally, Chairwoman Adeline makes her ruling, saying the matter is not serious enough for punishment, as conflicts between students are natural, and dismisses both girls with no consequences. Ephraim walks away conflicted, having prepared herself for expulsion and certain Deculane's character would demand it, only to be saved by him instead. Afterward, Professor Relin praises Deculane's unique perspective, but his focus shifts to Ephraim, who gathers her courage to approach him. She steels herself and asks if he remembers the name Luna, and with it her father, the man Deculane torments so deeply that he chooses death to end his suffering. Deculane, always good at predicting people, already expects Ephraim to approach him, since she is desperate for answers and wonders how he will react, even questioning if he might try to twist the committee's verdict just to save himself, and deep down she fears that he might not even remember how badly he treats her father, which would make everything worse for her. But to her surprise, he tells her not to dwell on past troubles that only hold her back from growth. And with those words he walks away, leaving her convinced that he must remember her father because otherwise he would not have helped her in that moment. And she thinks maybe he feels some guilt and responsibility, mistaking his intervention as pity, which strangely makes her happy, because at least the professor she hates so much has not forgotten what he does, and that is enough for her to accept things. While for Deculane the result of her case adds 2 more points to his death prevention, and then the story moves to Sylvia, who is explaining everything to her father Giltion von Ludwig Illade, head of the Illade family and a skilled Esper mage, who states that Ephraim Luna already misses her chance to rise as a mage 10 years earlier during the aptitude exam when both girls first meet, and the manometer goes wild in their presence, predicting an immeasurable talent that can one day make them archmages, leaving both of them staring blankly, unable to understand the weight of those words, because archmages are beings so powerful that not even emperors can threaten them, and only a rare few ever reach such a level. Their names remembered in history forever, with tradition holding that only 3 appear in each era regardless of specialty, and at present only Demerkin occupies 1 seat, leaving 2 empty, with Adeline already being a candidate for one, which leaves only 1 final place open. And back then the Illade and Luna families stand against each other, and now they are still competing for that last position, while Sylvia's father is determined that his daughter will take the title no matter the cost, even threatening Ephraim's father and stopping him from enrolling his daughter at the academy. And Sylvia knows very well that the only reason her family crushes the Lunas so ruthlessly is to ensure she can claim the Archmage seat, something that is not just her fate but also her personal desire. And that is why Ephraim's defiant words back then cut her so deeply, though she brushes it off later as bad luck. And while Giltheon doesn't see Ephraim as much of a threat now, what concerns him more is Professor Deculane, since he fears that even though Deculane seems like an ordinary man, he has once been a genius at a young age, and there is no guarantee that he will not rise again as a dark horse in the future. Though this is not new information to Sylvia, because from the very moment he deciphers her trap, she already senses that there is hidden potential in him. When the explosion takes place, it is true that Sylvia erases Ephraim's mana, but at the same time she plants a hidden trap, using the clash of their powers to trigger a void that makes the disaster worse and shifts the blame onto Ephraim. Yet the reason Deculane glares at them both is because he already sees through her trick from the very start, even though she is careful to hide it, and instead of exposing her, he creates a third option, a compromise, forcing them to play along with his version so that all of them can come out alive. A warning wrapped in mercy that shows how deeply he understands the situation. And though Sylvia underestimates him, she now finds herself questioning just what kind of man he really is. A few days later, the scene moves to Deculane's Grand Manor, a place fit for royalty, polished and refined, accompanied by his driver. And as he reflects, he feels confident in his earlier decision to protect Ephraim, since doing so not only removes one possible route toward his death but also earns him valuable store currency. Still, he doesn't expect her to reveal her hostility so quickly in their first meeting, though the outcome makes him an enemy of Sylvia too, yet he is sure it is still the right move. Setting that aside, Deculane isn't particularly fond of social events, but he also knows he cannot waste any opportunity to earn more points, and attending the Flower of the New Year festival gives him a side quest worth half a point, bringing him closer to the 5 he needs to unlock the shop, which is why he resolves to spend time interacting with important characters. When he reaches the event, he is received with respect and honor. The party full of nobles whose polished laughter fills the room, and among the crowd he spots many familiar names from the game, though one in particular catches his attention. Ehelm, a character Woojin personally designs, which reassures him that attending is a wise choice. Out of nowhere, an old man greets him loudly, expressing his delight at meeting the famous Professor Dekulain, and his booming words instantly draw everyone's attention, turning the professor into the center of the party as nobles celebrate his presence, completely shattering the calm confidence he feels earlier about blending in. In the middle of the commotion, he overhears someone mention Sir Ganesha, and immediately pulls away from his current conversation, knowing this is one of the most important figures he cannot afford to miss. Scanning the hall carefully in search of the name, but despite his effort Ganesha is nowhere to be seen, and Dekulain worries he might lose the chance to make contact, not realizing that the terrifying adventurer he is so desperate to find is already standing right behind him, revealed at this point in the story as the 5th strongest character to appear so far. Dekulain finally spots her on the upper floor, the scarlet-haired woman gazing silently at the crowd below, and he rushes forward to meet her, only to be intercepted at the worst time by Ehelm. To understand the interruption, Ehelm is no ordinary man. He is an exclusive mage of the royal palace, ranked as a monarch, the same level as Dekulain. With a smirk, Ehelm provokes him, pretending surprised that the professor still remembers his name, then wastes no time bringing up rumors that spread. He claims Dekulain's research has stalled over the past 3 years and that people are beginning to doubt his real skill and talent. The man is bold, speaking directly in his face. Ehelm is once Dekulain's peer during their university days, and the two are close then, but after Dekulain becomes head professor, Ehelm's jealousy festers and eventually turns to open hostility. The old Dekulain might lash out at such insults, but the current one stays calm, cool as ever, refusing to act on impulse. Besides, the rumors aren't lies, so there is nothing worth denying. His patience, however, cracks when he suddenly realizes that Ganesha, his real target for the night, is no longer in sight. His only goal for attending the event is spoiled by Ehelm's endless chatter. Frustrated, he brushes past him with an insult, calling him a piece of rotten cheese, leaving Ehelm completely stunned by the strange remark. Dekulain refuses to waste another word, focusing instead on finding Ganesha before she slips away from the gathering. His sudden departure leaves several nobles wondering where he has gone, but he ignores the whispers, determined to complete his task. Though he wants to silence Ehelm permanently, the crowd around them forces him to restrain himself. Then, to his surprise, Ganesha herself calls his name. She stands beside him, asking curiously if he has been searching for her. While the truth is yes, he awkwardly says he has gotten lost, which makes the Scarlet Adventurer chuckle as she easily sees through his excuse. She teases him for lying, then softens, apologizing for her mistake in their earlier mission and asking him to forget it. This confirms they indeed worked together before through commissions. She apologizes again, admitting that her personal feelings ruin the mission because she refuses to hand over a talented child he wants, choosing to protect the child instead. This revelation gives Dekulain clarity about the old man's actions, realizing he plans to use the child's talent for his research and to uphold his name. Just as he is considering this, Ganesha asks him a pointed question, wondering how long he plans to keep up the facade and continue living as he is. Her words, spoken carefully but firmly, force him into deep reflection about himself, his choices, and the kind of life he intends to pursue. Before Kim Woojin takes over Dekulain's body, the professor lives recklessly, acting violently, making enemies, and destroying trust by hurting others just to gain fame. But now the current Dekulain decides he wants to live differently, which shocks Ganesha because she expects him to lash out at her. Even Kim Woojin is surprised, since the old Dekulain once dares to attack one of the strongest people alive, showing how reckless he has been, though Woojin clearly understands that Ganesha, with her invincible body and mastery of martial arts, can easily crush him without effort. She is among the rare adventurers who max out their physical stats, and if the old Dekulain truly sends assassins after her, she is already dead. But instead, she now finds his calm behavior so strange, she wonders if he has hit his head. Dekulain, having already completed what he comes for, turns to leave, and when Ganesha asks if he is truly not planning to come after her again, he casually replies that it would be beneath him, leaving her stunned. Returning to the hall, he reflects that while he could use Eucline's power to pressure her through the guild, it would only raise his death risk, and then the system reveals he actually avoids a death flag by not acting against her, horrifying him with the thought that the earlier conversation could have killed him if it had gone differently, showing even a simple party is dangerous for him. The story then shifts to another adventurer, Rayleigh, related to Julie, who notices Julie looking irritated and asks boldly if she has made any progress with her fiancé, meaning Professor Deculin, since rumors have been spreading. Julie grows tense and admits she is frustrated, confessing that their relationship is already failing. At that moment, Deculin himself appears, though instead of greeting her, he simply leaves the gathering without even glancing at her, unusual for someone known to enjoy social events, and his cold dismissal shocks onlookers, fueling gossip that his early departure is tied to a fallout with his fiancée. The nobles whisper theories, assuming Deculin and Julie's relationship is collapsing, but ironically, not even Kim Woo-jin, the developer who creates the game world, can predict this strange and unexpected turn. A week passes since the social gathering, and Deculin trains hard, showing off his muscles as he powers through pull-ups. Alongside his usual memorization and telekinetic practice, he adds workouts to his routine to boost stamina, mostly because he almost kills himself with a reckless experiment a few days earlier that leaves him coughing blood on the floor. Any ordinary mage would die, but he survives thanks to his Iron Man attribute, making him like Tony Stark. After meeting Ganesha, he tries engraving fire control together with telekinesis to improve his metal manipulation and strengthen his core magic, hoping to cut down the time needed to learn more spells. But it is so dangerous that the immense strain on his body forces him to start a fitness regimen, and before long, his body looks shaped like a bodybuilder. With his workout finished, he goes off to class, but the scene shifts to his office where Alan hands him a message from the magic tower, sent by someone of high rank. Reading it, Deculin discovers that in 6 months there will be an audit hearing on his research and he has to prepare documents for it. This is serious because the delay in his work means his research is now being questioned, and since his title as head professor is crucial, losing it would also destroy his only hope of ever returning home. Wanting to prepare, he decides to search through his laboratory, but when he enters, the place is a disaster, looking like it has been attacked and left uncared for. It is impossible that the real Deculin, if he had used the space often, would let it reach this state. One particularly filthy area stands out, almost as if something has been hidden there, and though he can't be sure, Deculin thinks it is worth investigating. Using telekinesis to avoid touching the mess, he sifts through the trash until he uncovers a book, which turns out to be encrypted, clearly Deculin's life's work, sealed to prevent theft. But with his comprehension skill, he easily breaks through the code, and golden light shines from the pages, signaling the great value of the research. With the help of his wealthy magnate and sharp eyesight attributes, he immediately recognizes the book as highly valuable and significant for his future. Even though the research is clearly incomplete, with many pages torn out and left unfinished, it still radiates significance, proving its value despite its flaws. To his surprise, Deculin discovers a pendant with a picture of Ephraim Luna and her father inside, finally helping him connect the dots. The man once works under him as a researcher. This explains why the Luna family hates Professor Deculin so much, blaming him for torturing her father in the name of personal fame and forcing Ephraim to live a harsh and painful life. But now things will change. Deculin resolves to finish the research using his comprehension skill, and once it is complete, he plans to add her father's name as co-author, giving him recognition at last, a piece of character growth no one expects. The scene then shifts to a cafe inside the university, where several commoner students gather, forming a group to support one another in times of need, since without solidarity, the nobles would crush them. When they ask for Ephraim's opinion, she is caught off guard, unsure of how to respond. She is, after all, a fallen noble herself, but with no house or property left to her name, she has already let go of her former life. The orange-haired girl confidently welcomes her as one of them, while the others quickly agree, naming Ephraim as the representative of the commoners. A short-haired girl suggests they make their group official by getting a professor's approval, which becomes their biggest obstacle. They first mention Professor Lelin, but his bias toward nobles makes him a poor choice, followed by Professor Carmel, who also discriminates against commoners. Someone then argues that Professor Deculin wouldn't be a good option either. While the discussion continues, Ephorine is distracted, staring hungrily at a strawberry dessert nearby. But the orange-haired girl suddenly declares with conviction that Decollane is their best chance, insisting they ask for his support. Everyone agrees that Ephorine should be the one to approach him, expecting her to lead the request, but her shocked face shows how unwilling she is. One boy argues that Decollane looks down on everyone equally, and since Ephorine escapes punishment thanks to him, it means he favors her at least slightly, or so they think. Ephorine quickly denies this, upset that the conversation shifts in this direction. She wants nothing to do with Decollane. Refusing their request outright, she runs off, but the orange-haired girl chases after her, hoping to change her mind. Ephorine firmly clarifies that whatever they imagine is never going to happen. Suddenly, Julie freezes, her body stiffening in shock. Confused, Ephorine turns to see what startles her and meets Decollane's gaze, realizing with dread that the devil himself is standing right there. Ephorine never imagines she will run into him at such an inconvenient moment, and to make things worse, Julie bolts immediately, leaving everything on her shoulders. Unsure of what to say as the professor is already walking away, Ephorine hesitates but then gathers her courage and calls out to him, requesting approval for a club that needs his signature. Embarrassed but determined, she forces herself to ask, reasoning that since he rarely approves requests from commoners, it is worth at least trying. To her astonishment, Decollane not only takes the letter but signs it right away and even asks for the details to be sent to his office. Completely stunned, Ephorine stares at the signed paper in disbelief, unable to figure out his unpredictable personality. Julie, thrilled with the outcome, happily runs off, while Ephorine remains troubled, wondering why he is treating her so differently and showing kindness that feels undeserved. Later, in class, Decollane begins his lecture on elements, explaining how they serve as the foundation of all magic, and yet many mages still fail to understand the difference between pure and categorical elements. While he speaks, Ephorine's mind wanders, torn between confusion and resentment, questioning whether his behavior is driven by guilt or pity. To her, everything feels insincere, because this is still the man who destroys her father's life. And if he truly feels remorse, he should admit his sins openly instead of hiding behind gestures. Her irritation is clear enough that Julie asks if she is okay, snapping Ephorine out of her thoughts. Julie assumes she is upset with the students sitting across from them, and soon Ephorine realizes she is right. It is the nobles, including Sylvia, who glare at her with hostility, still holding grudges from the earlier incident that makes her the enemy of every noble family. Forcing a calm reply, Ephorine tells Julie she wants to focus on the lecture. As the class continues, Decollane shifts to explaining the importance of magic circles, going into detail about how even small strokes alter the effects of a spell before introducing the day's topic, something he calls flowing fire. Ephorine cannot help but notice the difference. His lectures in the past are more about flaunting his authority and reputation, but now, under Kim Woo-jin's influence, his teaching has transformed, showing the true artistry and fundamentals of magic. The students are left stunned, even Sylvia, who has long lost her childlike curiosity for magic because she is naturally gifted. Decollane goes on to show them the water magic circle, and when he combines it with the fire circle, something extraordinary appears. A purple circle that produces fire flowing smoothly like water. The students are amazed, completely captivated, and Sylvia especially cannot believe his lecture reaches such theoretical depths. Most so-called geniuses rely only on natural talent and intuition, barely caring for theory. If all mages focus only on theory, magic is reduced to nothing more than a formula in a container. The irony is clear. Too much theory slows down real learning, while intuition cannot be explained. True geniuses rely on intuition, and even elites cannot explain how they have it. For a professor with a reputation filled with rumors, it is shocking that Decollane is determined to teach theory in such depth, despite his high status. By the end of the lecture, Ephorine is surprised to realize how much she enjoys it, finding herself completely absorbed. Her thoughts, however, are soon disturbed by a wave of insults coming from the other side of the door, clearly the nobles trying to harass her again after her conflict with Sylvia. To her surprise, she notices a sponsorship certificate slipped under the door. Her first thought is that it has to be a cruel prank. There is no way anyone will sponsor her when she is hated so much. Still, she decides to check, taking it to the administration office, where the receptionist confirms its authenticity with the official seal. The shock leaves her frozen, then fills her with overwhelming joy. She even pulls at her own face, convinced she must be dreaming. Nervously, she glances around, terrified someone will discover her secret. She hides under the table, clutching the certificate worth 100,000 eln, the equivalent of 100 million, and panics at the thought of people finding out. Even the staff member gives her a suspicious look, which only makes her more frantic. Her clumsy tantrum ends with her hitting her head on the desk, which finally convinces her it is real. Tears well up as she realizes the absurdity of it all. The girl who is always shunned finally has her talent recognized, and for the first time she feels hopeful, ready to push harder for her future. In Eucline Manor, Deculane's half-sister discovers that he is heading to the auction of Schatzenjavel, and she grows furious, remembering how he wastes 10 million elm there the previous year, now fearing he will throw away even more this time. At the auction site, Deculane is eager to finally buy something worthwhile, since back when he first starts using telekinesis, he realizes he needs a special kind of metal to make up for his lacking talent, replacing the temporary wooden steel substitute he relies on before. The genuine item is being sold today, and so he waits in the VIP room, only to encounter an unexpected figure, his fiancée, Julie. She notices him, glares angrily, and walks over to confront him, clearly irritated by his presence, much like a girlfriend upset at being ignored. Julie immediately brings up Sylvia and Ephorine, whom he detains to be judged before the committee, and though Deculane points out it is old news, she scolds him for crushing the dreams of new students with his behavior, warning him not to repeat such mistakes. She ends by saying this is her final piece of advice, words that strongly suggest breaking off their engagement. Deculane stays calm and actually welcomes this outcome, since despite her beauty, he has no real desire to marry her, especially in this false life, as she represents a major red flag and a bundle of death variables that could literally endanger him, even on their wedding day. Remaining silent until she turns to leave, he then provokes her by asking if she comes just to irritate him, embarrassing her as she quickly denies it, saying she only comes in search of something. Deculane tells her to relax, pointing out how she escalates from calm to angry in a moment, leaving her pouting in frustration. For the first time, he finds her expression somewhat cute, but then he suddenly feels a sharp and unfamiliar emotion, realizing that although he has kept his personality under control, Kim Woo-jin's mind might slowly be influenced by Deculane's lingering emotions. Still, before he can think too deeply about it, an announcement rings through the auction house, declaring the event is about to begin, and he dismisses the feeling, believing it is nothing more than his body reacting instinctively. Back at the auction house, Deculane sits waiting as the first item is revealed. A special vase crafted by a famous artisan from the East. Its brilliance shines so strongly that golden rays of light reach him, the same glow he once notices while studying his research papers, convincing him that he must have it. The host welcomes several bids, but Deculane ends up securing the vase with a final price of 2.5 million elna, outbidding everyone else. To him, the vase holds more value than the money spent, and with his massive wealth, over 200 million in his account, it barely makes a dent. Item after item falls into his possession, including a rare ring, a pair of enchanted scissors, and a rune necklace, shocking the crowd as he continues to bid without hesitation. Even when he raises the stakes with a 5.5 million bid, people stare in disbelief at his wild spending, while his fiancée scoffs, dismissing him as an attention seeker wasting fortunes for nothing. She feels they are completely incompatible, disgusted by his reckless spending. Yet Julie has her own reason for being here. She comes to secure the Winter's Fire, a legendary ore rarely found, considered one of the rarest treasures in existence. When the host finally presents the Snowflare stone, its radiant beauty captures the room, mesmerizing both Deculane and Julie. Known as one of the top 10 rarest metals in the game, this ore, often used to forge swords, embodies both heat and cold in a perfect paradox. Only dragon bones surpass its value, making it a priceless treasure. Julie is determined to claim it, and bidding quickly escalates to 30 million elne, where she beams with confidence, believing victory is hers. But before she can celebrate, Deculane steps in with a shocking bid of 31 million, instantly stealing her spotlight. Anger rises in her as she accuses him, even silently, of interfering with her one true goal. She fights back with 32 million, only for him to counter with 33 million. Spectators wonder why the professor would go after a forging stone, speculating he wants to gift it to his fiancée, believing that's why he's blocking her. But Deculane soon realizes he's competing directly against Julie, confirming that she personally craves the Snowflare stone, and if he wins, she will resent him forever. Still, the stone is too valuable to pass up, having appeared for the first time in 3 long years. Despite the risk, Deculane feels ready to take the gamble, prepared to challenge Julie with everything he has. The bidding war finally ends at 42 million, with Professor Deculane winning the Snowflare stone, and the crowd breaks into applause at the intense competition, though in reality it is nothing more than a contest of who can throw around the most money. Many in the audience assume Julie is simply being stubborn since, in their eyes, Deculane only buys the stone to gift it to her anyway. But Julie is far from pleased. Her anger burns hot, and her blood is boiling. To her, it feels like history repeating itself, much like last year when Deculane tries to shower her with riches and jewelry on their engagement day, which she remembers bitterly as one of the worst days of her life. She hates the flaunting of wealth and power, finding it humiliating, and her annoyance is written all over her face. For years, the only thing she truly wants from Deculane is something he always refuses to give. And no, it isn't anything scandalous. It is far simpler than that. That day, she ruins her own engagement by walking away, but in doing so, she wounds his pride. Despite being a knight with strong dignity, she still ends up tied to a professor whose vile personality makes life miserable. Though she is rewarded with the captain's position, rumors spread about her everywhere, and she knows Deculane himself is the one fueling those lies, deepening her hatred. It is then she decides he is unworthy of her love. Now standing at the auction house, those same feelings rise again, only to be interrupted by Deculane himself approaching her. With an unexpectedly calm and soft expression, he asks if she has been aiming for the Snowflare stone too. Furious, she assumes he is mocking her, bracing herself for an argument. But then she freezes in shock when he simply says he is sorry. The words stun her since Deculane is never the type to apologize. Confused and paralyzed, she can't even respond as he politely takes his leave, leaving her mind spinning with countless questions about his true intentions. Walking away still dazed, she is met by her elder sister Josephine, who casually invites her for a ride. Meanwhile, the professor reflects on what happens, recognizing Julie's frustration at having lost the stone she desires. But what surprises him most is that no death variables appear despite the situation. It makes him wonder more about Deculane's original twisted personality, which in one timeline drives Julie to take his life. Returning home, he is greeted by his maids, who seem unusually unsettled. When they mention that Yariel has come by, he freezes, and soon his half-sister materializes right behind him, furious over his reckless spending at the auction. She intends to invest that fortune into mining operations, while he, in her eyes, carelessly squanders it away. Trying to calm her, he explains that he buys something capable of returning the money with profit, but Yariel is far from convinced. Her anger only grows, and she lashes out, accusing him of treating her as nothing more than a disposable tool. Deculane knows right away that things are dangerous when his sister Yariel breaks down, crying that all she ever does is clean up after his reckless mistakes. She calls him out for wasting the money she works so hard to protect, her aura glowing red with anger as she accuses him of gambling away their estate's wealth. The pressure from her aura triggers his villain's fate attribute, warning him he is close to death, and the golden light within it shows him this disaster could also become an opportunity if handled well. Yet his first response is foolish. He tells her not to worry, which only makes her explode with rage, listing every hardship she endures because of his carelessness. She reminds him how their fortune collapses after their parents die and how he wastes 150 million in one day. To silence her, Deculane makes a shocking declaration: he will give her the position of head of the house. Stunned, Yariel freezes, unable to believe what he just says, but he repeats it firmly, even offering to swear an oath, a deadly risk if broken. She is shaken that he would go that far, wondering if he hits his head, but eventually accepts, warning him that if he ever goes back on his word, she'll kill him herself. With that, she storms off to clean up his latest mess. Decolen breathes a sigh of relief as the system rewards him with 2 points for avoiding a death variable, content to give up the title and thinking it may bring him closer to escape. Just then, Ganesha appears, commenting on how genuine his words sound and apologizing for intruding. She admits she is shocked by what she sees, but Decolen brushes it off, saying his sister is simply better suited to lead. That's when Ganesha drops a bombshell: Yariel isn't even of Eucline blood. The revelation shakes him to the core, since this twist is never part of the original game. Ganesha delivers a shocking revelation, telling Decolen that his sister doesn't have even a single drop of Eucline blood in her veins, although he is already aware that they aren't directly related. Discovering that there is absolutely no blood connection at all still manages to surprise him. Seeing his reaction, Ganesha reminds him that he himself requested an investigation into Yariel, though Decolen remains calm and replies that it doesn't matter to him. This indifferent response throws Ganesha off, as she expects him to be at least somewhat shaken, but she accepts his words and promises to keep the truth a secret. Just before leaving, however, she shares one more critical piece of news. The 6 snakeheads, infamous leaders of a powerful criminal organization with million elm bounties each, have started to move, and worse yet, they are targeting the item Decolen bought at the auction. She warns him that he has been too careless with his magical defenses and advises him to be far more cautious. Leaving behind only a white kerchief, Ganesha disappears into the night, while Decolen reflects on the revelation about his sister and finds himself surprisingly unbothered. Whether she is related to him by blood or not, he still views her as family, and after all, he isn't the original Decolen anyway. Meanwhile, in a forest camp, Ganesha sits by a fire with her team, discussing how Decolen's attitude has changed so much lately. While she admits to being impressed, one of her men teases her, saying she has always been too soft when it comes to handsome men, which makes her opinion biased. Flustered and furious, Ganesha threatens to slice him apart if he keeps mocking her. Amid the bickering, another adventurer, who is also a relative of Julie, admits she too is surprised to see a more human side to Decolen. Straightening her posture, Ganesha confirms this change and reassures them that they no longer need to worry about supplying him with a magic slave, as he no longer seems like the same cruel professor he once was. With that, she instructs her group to keep everything they witnessed today completely secret. They all agree, and together they cast teleportation magic, vanishing into the sky in a burst of light. The story then shifts to the next morning inside the Imperial University's Magic Tower, where Decolen browses through the system store. He notices a level 1 attribute that could enhance both his mana's quality and its output, an upgrade that would greatly strengthen his abilities. Unfortunately, the price is 101 store currency, and while he now has access to the shop, he simply doesn't have enough points to buy it. He knows that the store's system is tricky. Skills can only be bought with store currency, and with each new level, the costs double, meaning he cannot afford to waste points carelessly. Thinking it over, he realizes he needs to raise his physical strength and improve his mana quality, which requires obtaining 4 more points as quickly as possible. Just as he contemplates his next steps, Alan arrives, looking anxious, and hands him the latest issue of the Wizard Journal. Flipping through the pages, Decolen notices a wanted notice featuring the infamous wizard killer, Lockhart, who has recently been spotted on the outskirts of the area. Though the threat is real, and many mage players would fear such a foe, Decolen isn't particularly worried, as he isn't a normal mage. Instead, he sees Lockhart as a golden opportunity to gain the extra store currency he needs, even secretly hoping for an encounter. When Alan voices his worries, Decolen dismisses his concerns and tells him there is nothing to fear. He instructs Alan to go to the library and wait there for him. Then, without warning, Decolen shocks him by asking if he wants to become an assistant professor. Alan is stunned, hardly able to believe what he just hears, since Decolen always criticizes him for his lack of magical talent. Bombarding Decolen with questions, he is silenced when Decolen curtly tells him to shut up and hands him a bangle engraved with the emblem of the Eucline family. Overwhelmed and emotional, Alan thanks him with genuine gratitude. Decolen meanwhile sees value in him, not as a mage, but as someone reliable who can manage documents and errands. Someone who stays loyal even when others abandon him because of Decolen's cold reputation. Not wanting Alan to feel unappreciated, Decolen even gives him money and tells him to go enjoy a proper meal. While Alan is left in disbelief, Decolen leaves for the staff-only library. His purpose is to study Luna's old research papers on pure element creation and to search for rare grimoires about manipulation magic. As he combs through the documents, he finds countless mistakes in Luna's research and immediately begins correcting them. Wandering the aisles for more material, his eyes unexpectedly fall upon Sylvia, who is quietly browsing the shelves. What shocks him is that this is a staff-only library, and she has no business being there. 10 minutes earlier, Sylvia is searching for materials inside the executive reading room, a restricted area usually reserved for faculty members. The librarian is hesitant to let her in, but another professor overrules him, granting Sylvia access because she is Ilade's successor and the rookie mage of the year. Left with no choice, the librarian allows her to browse freely. Sylvia, whose real passion is studying literature and languages, comes specifically to find a rare novel written in Ethanel, the language of the long-extinct fairies, making such books extremely difficult to come by. This is the reason she enters a place normally forbidden to her. When Deculain enters, Sylvia doesn't even notice his presence until he confronts her directly, demanding to know why she is in the executive reading room and warning her that he can call the disciplinary committee on her again. Shocked, she remembers rumors that he dislikes libraries and worries he might follow through. Quickly, she explains that Professor Leland grants her permission to enter while she searches for the document she needs. Deculain immediately realizes both the professor and the librarian break regulations, and he feels all of them should be punished for ignoring the rules. As Sylvia tries to defend herself, he takes the book from her hands and instantly recognizes it as an Ethanel novel, questioning if she can even read it. Though he admits her knowledge isn't the issue, she explains her interest in literature and languages, insisting she wants to study the fairies. In the end, Deculain chooses not to press the matter further but firmly warns her that if she ever breaks the rules again without authorization, he will ensure she faces disciplinary action. He advises her to have others borrow books for her in the future rather than relying on her family's name. Humiliated, Sylvia bites her tongue, anger boiling inside as she silently fumes at his arrogance. To her, she only wants to deepen her understanding of the fairies, yet he questions her ability to read the book, criticizing the inconsistencies of the Ethanel language and making her feel small. While she dwells on his words, Deculain already moves on. Meanwhile, in a different setting, a group of adventurers pushes through a dense forest, preparing to hunt a magical beast. Watching them closely, Deculain notes their steady composure, even though it is their first practical training session. They are inside the Mountain of Darkness, a dangerous area near the university that doubles as a training ground and is known for its rich magical resources. Though valuable, it is perilous, filled with venomous creatures, so the magic tower maintains protective barriers and regular patrols. At the time, Professor Leland expresses concern since the post of head professor overseeing this place is vacant. To everyone's surprise, Deculain steps forward and volunteers for the responsibility, earning the respect and approval of his peers. Another professor quietly admires the decision, thinking this is the kind of initiative a leader should show. Deep down, however, Deculain's true motivation comes from a system side quest notification, the Darkness of the Magic Tower, which promises him store currency and an additional achievement reward if he succeeds. A strange pull draws him toward the mountain, likely the true reason for this quest, and it marks a turning point as the game shifts into something closer to horror. Once he is named head professor, everyone prepares to leave. 9 hours later, Ephraim and her friends are at a cafe near the Magic Tower, celebrating her reaching 100,000 Elni as she happily treats them, chatting about the approval of their club and their first meeting. Their talk shifts to a training session at the Mountain of Darkness, where 50 people join despite accidents. Suddenly, a scream and tremor shake the area. Running outside, they see someone begging for help. Julie senses something wrong and yells for Ephraim to stop, but she ignores it and runs, only to turn and see her friend gone. Lost in an unfamiliar place, she recalls the figure asking for help and calls to them, but the person suddenly screams and turns monstrous. Preparing to fight, she is startled when Deculain appears. She immediately accuses him of hurting a civilian, but he calmly tells her to look again. The illusion fades, revealing a demon, and he explains she has been tricked. When she tries to step in, he orders her to stay back. The demon lunges, forcing him into battle. Analyzing its glowing core and illusion magic, he is unaffected thanks to his resistance to mental attacks. His Euclean bloodline awakens, known for purifying mana, boosting its quality, and heightening aggression. The ancient legacy feared for its relentless demon-hunting surges through him as his rage builds. Fully embracing his instincts, he vows to destroy the demon. The monster attacks with all its might, but he fights back with overwhelming power, completing his side quest, unlocking store currency, and defeating his first demon. With his Euclean attribute now active, he calls the creature filthy before killing it. Yet when he looks closely, he is unsettled by its presence. Realization hits him. The demon's appearance isn't random, but a sign that the game itself is moving forward even without a player. The following morning in the university building, Ephraim wakes up groggy and frightened, screaming as she realizes she is lying in a ward bed with a nurse watching over her. The nurse gently asks if she is awake, but Ephraim, though faintly remembering being in the forest, cannot piece together exactly what happens. The nurse explains that a demon appears at the Mountain of Darkness and traps her in its illusion, causing her to collapse, but she is eventually found and rescued. To her dismay, she learns that the one who saves her life is none other than Professor Deculain. Glancing at the clock, she asks what day it is, only to be shocked when the nurse tells her she has been unconscious for 36 hours. It is already Wednesday, which means she has missed classes and is very late. She quickly rushes out, spots her two friends waiting, and hurries with them to class, making it just in time. One friend, relieved, admits she visits the clinic while Ephraim lies motionless, and she is happy to finally see her awake. As they settle into their seats, they are informed that today's lecture will be different, a special class that leaves everyone curious. Soon after, Deculain arrives with Alan carrying a box, and Ephraim stares in confusion, wondering who this person is. Without hesitation, Deculain introduces Alan as his new teaching assistant, shocking the class since he has always been known for teaching alone. The students begin whispering, speculating that serving as his assistant might help build a career, but with Deculain, who rarely supports anyone, that benefit seems doubtful. For Ephraim, the announcement feels personal, as it reminds her of her father, who despite his magical skill never manages to earn such a position even at the age of 30. She questions why Deculain suddenly accepts someone now. Deculain then announces that the day's lesson will be practical, a task based entirely on experience, and assigns everyone a timed 3-hour exercise. As Ephraim begins working, she finds it impossible to keep her mind steady, as her thoughts wander toward her father's inheritance and the struggles he leaves behind. She also notices that her bracelet bears an uncanny resemblance to Deculain's, and the similarity sparks questions about whether her father once has a connection with the professor and if that might explain Deculain's strange gestures of generosity toward her. Determined to put those thoughts aside, she forces herself to continue the assignment. Sylvia, however, finishes hers in just 25 minutes and 15 seconds, astonishing everyone as it takes her less than half an hour. Deculain and Alan watch silently before Deculain permits her to leave, and though Sylvia looks relieved, she leaves the room filled with hatred for him. Meanwhile, Ephraim continues to struggle as time ticks by. Slowly, the other students complete their assignments, and Deculain dismisses them one by one once their 3 hours are finished. Eventually, the room empties until only Ephraim remains. Feeling hopeless, she slams her head down on the desk, desperately trying to come up with something. Thinking of Sylvia, she realizes bitterly that not only has she failed to surpass her rival, she hasn't even managed to finish a single task, leaving her as the only one in the entire class who produces nothing. She calls herself stupid, incompetent, and a failure, muttering insults at herself as tears of despair rise. Suddenly, Deculain's cold voice breaks the silence, informing her that 5 hours and 40 minutes have already passed and asking how much longer she plans to make him wait. Shocked, Ephraim looks up to find he is still there. Deculain sternly criticizes her, pointing out that she cannot even complete a simple assignment and then crumbles emotionally under the pressure. He tells her bluntly that no matter who mocks her, who surpasses her, or even if someone she hates stands right in front of her, she must remain calm, logical, and collected at all times. With a weak and unstable mindset like hers, he declares, she will never rise to his level. His disappointment is clear, and without waiting for a response, he turns and leaves her behind. Alone in the silent room, Ephraim sits frozen in despair, the clock ticking endlessly around her. In frustration, she slams her hand on the desk again, replaying his cruel words about needing to trust herself. At first, she refuses to accept them, repeating his sentences under her breath as though to fight them off, but the more she repeats them, the more her frustration and anger mount. Suddenly, her bracelet bursts into a glowing green aura that wraps tightly around her, its power filling the room. Fueled by her anger, determination, and desperation not to fail, she clenches her fists and, with fiery resolve burning in her voice, vows aloud that she will succeed, no matter what it takes. Deculain reflects on his recent efforts with Ephraim, admitting he puts in a great deal of work on her training, but in his mind, it is necessary because she has to become stronger to face what lies ahead. The appearance of the demon at the Mountain of Darkness is not just a random occurrence, but a sign that the main quest is about to begin, ushering in an age of overwhelming evil. In that age, powerful figures with strong moral alignments rise, and Deculain knows Ephraim will eventually be among them, though right now she lacks the mental resilience and the deep sense of responsibility required of a true mage. Still, he anticipates she will overcome these flaws and become a force to reckon with, perhaps even strong enough to threaten him. Yet, being someone who believes in self-reliance rather than fate, he is confident he can prevent that outcome and refuses to let anyone new surpass him. Soon after, Ephraim leaves the classroom, pauses, and rushes to his office, where she presents the results of her magical task. He notes it takes her 6 hours and 25 minutes to complete, which highlights her weaknesses as a non-academy graduate, but the quality of her work is so impressive that he cannot deny it deserves first place. The system recognizes this as well, rewarding him with store currency for completing a side quest. With that done, Deculain prepares to head home, only to be intercepted by a white-haired man. He recognizes him instantly as Zeit von Brugang, Julie's older brother, the head of the prestigious Frieden family, and the one who pushes strongly for Deculain and Julie's engagement. Zeit is no ordinary person but a formidable warrior who ranks above Ganesha in combat strength, a renowned named character with a fearsome reputation, which is why Deculain is confused about why he would personally seek him out. He quickly suspects this meeting may be connected to Julie's pursuit of the Snowflare Stone, though he holds no hostility towards Zeit, remaining alert to any possible threat. Zeit, however, only expresses concern over Julie and Deculain's interactions and casually proposes they share dinner, presenting it as a friendly gathering. Seeing no choice, Deculain agrees, and Zeit, satisfied, assures him he will make all the arrangements, even tailoring the menu to his taste. It becomes clear to Deculain that Zeit plans this thoroughly, leaving him no room to refuse, and knowing how much Zeit values the family's honor, Deculain realizes defying him would be dangerous. The next day at the Frieden household, Julie erupts in anger when she hears about the dinner, claiming she has no time for such things because of her intense training schedule and expressing her disgust at being forced to spend time with Deculain. Zeit dismisses her complaints as childish, accusing her of overreacting to something as trivial as the Snowflare Stone. Julie grows more frustrated as Zeit speculates that Deculain likely buys the rare metal used in weapon forging with the intention of gifting it to her, and he argues that if Deculain does give it to her, she would probably end the engagement herself. Julie's anger intensifies, but Zeit stays firm, reminding her that emotions have no place in politics. He even asks if she has feelings for anyone, bitterly noting that no man has ever truly loved her, which she immediately denies. He presses further, asking if her resistance is due to Deculain's poor reputation, but she rejects that too, insisting it has nothing to do with him. Her repeated denials only irritate Zeit more, but despite his frustration, he accepts her words. Before leaving, he warns her to be punctual for the dinner and to clear her mind of doubts before the meeting. As soon as he departs, Julie's emotions explode, and she unleashes her fury by slashing her sword with such force that the energy shakes the room. Her subordinates, silently watching, witness the display. One of them, Baron of the Order of Hidakine and Julie's loyal subordinate, calmly comments that her sword reflects her inner turbulence. Embarrassed, Julie apologizes for exposing such weakness. But Baron reassures her that he understands and quietly admits he also believes it is unfair for the family head to force her into marrying Deculain. Julie insists it doesn't matter to her anymore, but when Baron falls silent, she orders him to prepare. Meanwhile, Baron reflects deeply, determined to follow the path he has chosen, believing that only he can complete it, and that doing so will ultimately bring Julie the happiness she deserves. At the Berkt Assembly of Elders, a serious conference is being held to discuss the sudden appearance of a demon in the Mountain of Darkness, with the elders acknowledging that the mystical arts they have developed for centuries to counter demonic forces must now be put into real action. The conference leader, understanding the urgency, instructs his men to send letters to the 12 most powerful sorcerers, summoning them immediately to Berkt, and the messages are swiftly dispatched. At the same time, Deculain is at home carefully organizing the valuable items he acquires from the auction, starting with Luperan's ring, which boosts mana recovery, and the ancient rune necklace capable of storing large reserves of mana. Following Ganesha's earlier warning about theft, he intends to secure the remaining artifacts in a vault, but a problem quickly arises when he tests the Frost Flamestone. Unlike the other items, it refuses to respond at all, leaving him surprised and frustrated since his telekinesis has no effect on it. He suspects that the stone itself is resisting his mana and remembers how much he invests in obtaining it. His thoughts return to something he reads in the library about the communion process, a method used to tame legendary swords by forming a bond of understanding with them. Wondering if the same can apply here, he decides to attempt the process with the stone. The moment he reaches out, a wave of powerful energy surges into his body, and to his surprise, he manages to achieve 0.1% comprehension of it, which immediately increases his mana by 300. However, the realization quickly hits him that at such a slow pace, complete mastery of the stone will take at least a year because of the vast mana required. Although troubled by this, he sets the issue aside for now to focus on what lies ahead. Glancing at his schedule, he notes the dinner arranged by Zeit, but his expression stiffens as he also notices the looming death anniversary that falls just 3 days later, something scheduled before he even possesses this body. Both events weigh heavily on his mind as he prepares. When Deculain arrives at the high-class restaurant Von Meschel, he sees Baran already waiting while Julie, who leaves earlier, is inside. Zeit greets his sister warmly, complimenting her appearance, and when Deculain sees her, he is momentarily stunned. Unlike her usual armored and battle-ready look, she now looks breathtakingly beautiful, showing the effort she puts into preparing, which makes him feel a reluctant sense of admiration. Standing beside Julie is another figure who helps her pick the dress, her older sister Josephine. At first, Deculain barely notices her because he is focused on Julie, but soon he recognizes her and is caught off guard. Josephine is not just any sister, she is a named character of enormous influence, the cold and calculating mastermind of Shadow, an underground intelligence network with power comparable to Zeit himself. Known for her sociopathic tendencies, Josephine has no attachments beyond her love for Julie, and anyone who dares hurt or betray her sister suffers her ruthless wrath. Deculain instantly understands why she has not yet acted against him but also sees the danger in her sharp gaze, which silently warns him that one misstep will lead to disaster. Realizing the situation is delicate and potentially life-threatening, he knows the only way forward is to prove his sincerity regarding Julie. As the meal begins, Zeit wastes no time and directly asks Deculain when he plans to hold the engagement ceremony, reminding him that 3 years have already passed without progress. Before Deculain can answer, Julie, clearly uncomfortable, tries to interject, but Zeit silences her by saying that the adults are speaking. Deculain feels the crushing aura radiating from Josephine as he prepares to reply, but instead of forcing a decision, he calmly declares that the choice of engagement lies entirely with Julie, and if she does not want it, he will fully respect her decision and step aside. Julie is visibly shaken by his words, unprepared for such a declaration, while Zeit voices his concerns, warning that the family heads will never approve of such an easy dismissal of the engagement. Still trembling, Julie gathers herself and asks Zeit for a private discussion. After considering, he agrees, and together he and Josephine leave the room, leaving Deculain behind to ponder their real intentions. As he watches them go, trying to understand what Zeit is truly planning, Josephine pauses with a glass of wine in her hand, her calculating eyes glinting as she, too, wonders what schemes are being set in motion between her brother and sister. Deculain reflects on Josephine and quickly realizes that she must be using some hidden ability to eavesdrop on their conversation from behind the door, and remembering the laughter she gives earlier, he guesses it is just a trick to disguise a listening device, but instead of panicking, he sees this as an opportunity. If he can make Josephine believe his love for Julie is real, he might be able to escape the danger she poses. Fixing his gaze firmly on Julie, he begins to speak with calm determination, telling her that he has already spoken his truth, though his words leave her confused, and when she presses him, he insists that their engagement is not something he can casually break off whenever he pleases, for at this stage it has advanced too far to be undone by either of them alone. Growing more agitated, Julie demands to know why he is saying this and reminds him bitterly that before their engagement is even finalized, he shamelessly uses her influence to manipulate events in his favor, even going so far as to bargain with his own family elders by offering them compensation to make it happen. Her voice rises in anger as she accuses him of forcing her away from dangerous missions, pressuring her to abandon her path toward joining the Imperial Order and instead trying to push her into taking control of the order run under the Enclave family's shadow. She also throws in his betrayal of spreading malicious rumors about her when she refuses, unable to comprehend how he can still use such tactics after everything. Her fury burns hot, but Dekulin calmly admits the truth of her words, acknowledging that he deliberately manipulates her, restricts her freedom, and commits acts that cannot be justified. Julie, however, knows his twisted nature better than anyone else and refuses to be deceived, declaring she will not fall for his ploys again. Still, Dekulin concedes that he has wronged her deeply, but he shifts the conversation toward pointing out how both her sister Josephine and her brother Zeit have repeatedly interfered, overstepping their limits, and he reminds her that if not for the burden of family reputation, they would have no reason to oppose ending the engagement altogether. As Josephine listens in silence, Dekulin presses further, telling Julie that if she truly wishes to chase her dream of becoming a knightly defender, then she must cut ties with her family entirely. And with a surprisingly soft and open tone, he admits that he is neither honest nor loyal, that he represents the opposite of everything she values, which makes him completely unworthy of her. Julie is stunned by this blunt confession, but before she can react, he unexpectedly proposes a compromise. Instead of breaking their betrothal, they should stay engaged but never go through with marriage, allowing her freedom from the entanglements of politics and reputation, while still using his name as a shield until she is ready to pursue her dream openly, and he promises that he will wait for her. Though he knows deep inside that this is merely a performance for Josephine's benefit to prevent her unpredictable wrath, he delivers his words with sincerity, and Julie, reeling from the change in his demeanor, demands to know why he is suddenly offering her this way out. Dekulin smiles faintly and tells her he wants nothing from her in return except one small thing, that she smiles at him once every month, and he swears this is all he will ever ask. His words leave Julie shaken, her face flustered and her heart unsteady, while even Josephine, watching from the shadows, is caught off guard, momentarily uncertain if his feelings might actually be real. Though Dekulin knows he has merely said what Josephine wants to hear, he still notes Julie's reaction, and when he sees her blushing awkwardly, he even finds her unexpectedly charming in that instant, smirking to himself that she has managed to capture him, if only a little. Julie, furious at her own embarrassment, snaps back at him that she will not be tricked, claiming his words are humiliating, and challenges him to prove his sincerity if he truly means what he says. Josephine, however, grows unsettled by what she hears, beginning to wonder if his emotions are genuine after all, and deciding that she must continue to observe him more closely. With that, Dekulin successfully averts a deadly outcome, gaining 2 store currency in the process. 3 days quickly slip by, and soon the dreaded anniversary arrives. Driving out to the cemetery, Dekulin makes his way among the uneven tombstones and overgrown grass as the golden light of the setting sun stretches across the land, and though this place holds no real meaning for Dekulin himself, it is deeply tied to Kim Woojin, the self whose memories he now carries, stirring emotions within him as he walks the solemn ground. A flashback appears, showing a conversation between Kim Woojin and his team leader, Yuara, about adding an Easter egg into Dekulin's background story. Yuara suggests they should expand his past with the author's permission, but Kim immediately dismisses the idea, saying it is unnecessary, meaningless, and would only add more work for them. Yuara, however, is persistent, saying it is worth it and reminding Kim that they need to give their full dedication to the game. After some back and forth, Kim reluctantly agrees, though he keeps questioning why it matters at all, especially when it has no connection to the main story. Yuara truly believes it is meaningful, insisting that Dekulin's past includes a lost fiancé, and that this small addition will not be useless. Kim remembers Yuara's passion for creative details and wonders what she sees in Dekulan's bereaved fiancé that fascinates her so much. He thinks about whether she does it purely for the team's sake or if it is her way of caring about everyone around her. He also recalls how Yuara once laughs at some hidden joke connected to this Easter egg, though he can never figure out exactly what amuses her. Back in the present, Dekulan searches deeply into the fragments of Kim Woojin's memories, trying to uncover the entire truth and wondering if Yuara's choice to add such details is a stroke of genius or an act of cruelty. While searching, he discovers a tombstone with the name Yuara engraved on it, leaving him confused as to why her name appears there. Then the truth hits him. It is revealed that Dekulan's entire character is modeled after Kim Woojin himself, and Yuara has gone so far as to use her own name for the role of Dekulan's dead fiancé. Dekulan thinks about whether she ever thanked him for this choice. Kneeling down at the grave, he reaches out to touch the stone, his emotions overwhelming him as memories of Yuara come flooding back. He remembers the soft sound of her voice whispering to him, the day she praised his drawings, the time she gave him his coat, the warmth of her love, and the 7 years they spent together. Tears roll down his face as he relives those memories. But while he mourns, someone else at the cemetery is furious to find him there. Eventually, Dekulan stands up and walks away, realizing with surprise that he has stopped crying, something he attributes to the personality he now carries. As he moves further, he suddenly feels someone following him. Turning, he sees Lockhart standing there, radiating deadly intent. To his surprise, Lockhart knows who he is, and Dekulan already remembers the name. Lockhart, better known as the Wizard Killer, is designed as a mini-boss enemy, a nightmare specifically made to torment mages. His skill, magic nullification, makes him the perfect counter to spellcasters, and there are virtually no limits to his ability other than the need for physical contact. He can erase all magic within his reach. Proudly boasting about his immunity, he launches a relentless flurry of attacks, but Dekulan dodges each strike smoothly, moving with sharp precision. Lockhart grows shocked because most mages would cower in fear before him, yet this one avoids every blow with ease. Annoyed, he unleashes a stronger strike, only to be caught off guard as Dekulan counters with a punch to his face. Calmly stepping closer, Dekulan tells him the fight is pointless. Several days earlier, Dekulan finally gathers enough store currency to buy the mana improvement skill he always wanted. This upgrade greatly boosts his mana pool. Through constant practice, he realizes that while he needs to retrain his body to handle the changes, the power allows him to unleash far more mana with the same effort. While training, he is shocked to find that the ability spreads its effects much wider than expected. And when he picks up his practice stick, his hand sinks into it, proving that his physical strength has increased as well. Thanks to these combined enhancements, the fight is far easier than expected. After repeated exchanges, Lockhart is finally defeated, lying flat on the ground, utterly beaten. Dekulan has overcome another deadly variable and gains more store credits in the process. Reflecting on the battle, he admits that while he once believes his Iron Man attribute alone would be enough, the mana upgrade makes all the difference. Furious at his loss, Lockhart shouts insults, calling Dekulan a traitor. Watching his rage and strange abilities, Dekulan quickly pieces together the truth. Lockhart is not just any opponent, he is part of the Red Film race, a revelation so shocking that even Lockhart himself is stunned. The Bloodshroud race, named after the unique birthmarks they carry, are descendants of demons who live scattered across the continent, hiding their true identities because they are natural enemies of mages. Just as magecraft is first created to fight demons, the long-standing war between mages and the Red Film becomes one of the most defining conflicts in the world, forming a core part of the game's lore. Standing over the defeated Lockhart, Dekulan realizes that the Red Film are constantly in danger because of their heritage, and he suspects a large-scale purge may already be underway. Though he understands the suffering Lockhart's people endure, he calmly explains that killing innocent mages only makes Lockhart into the very monster he claims to despise. Enraged, Lockhart demands that Dekulan shut up and finish him off, but instead, Dekulan surprises him by saying he does not believe the Red Film are naturally evil. Lockhart, still furious, calls him a hypocrite, But Dikulen explains that the only time he has ever lost control of his instincts is when fighting a true demon, something deeply tied to his Ukraine bloodline, which has hunted demons for generations. For him, this reaction is instinct, not choice, and he wonders if he is losing his composure before Lockhart or if he is simply reacting to his provocations. Making his stance clear, he insists that the Red Film are humans as well, and that he can place trust in them. As inspectors arrive, Dekulane quickly knocks Lockhart unconscious to ensure he can be arrested without resistance. One of them, introducing himself as Ropa, praises Dekulin's strong kick and even jokes about kicking the criminal again, but Dekulin dismisses the suggestion and instead uses magic to uproot a nearby tree, transforming it into a rope that can suppress Lockhart's power, since regular cuffs would fail. Handing it to Ropa, he suggests tying him up with it. Curious about how Ropa arrives so quickly, Dekulane asks if he is patrolling, but the inspector replies that he comes after receiving a report, which he thought Dekulane had sent. Dekulane brushes it aside, saying someone else probably reported the commotion. Leaving the matter in their hands, he walks away, relieved that the situation ends without unnecessary bloodshed. The next day, Yeriel arrives at Dekulane's training room carrying a letter from Berkt, who has called for a gathering for the first time in 15 years. Taking the letter, Dekulane asks if she really comes all the way just for this, thinking such duties should normally fall on him, but when he opens it, he learns it concerns the demon sighting at the Mountain of Darkness. All mages are being summoned to a meeting, and for him, this marks the beginning of a new main quest titled Bercht's Call. The meeting is scheduled for a week later, and he is allowed to bring one guard. Yariel suggests taking Jeff, but Dekulane immediately refuses, pointing out that Jeff is just their driver and has no skill with weapons. Even so, Yariel insists he must take someone along, warning him that the road to Berkt is dangerous. Hearing this, Dekulane is caught off guard by her concern, and when he looks at her, she quickly becomes flustered and raises her voice, clarifying that she only cares because she doesn't want him to die. Slightly blushing, she offers to choose a guard for him, and Dekulane agrees to let her handle it. Meanwhile, at Freyheim's outpost, Yuli is busy training young knights in swordsmanship when the vice-captain watches quietly, debating what action he should take. Suddenly Baron, who has been standing behind him unnoticed, responds to his thoughts, startling him. After steadying himself, the vice-captain admits that a commission has arrived for their order, though he doubts their captain will approve it. Baron tells him to ask regardless, and after some hesitation, the vice-captain explains that the request involves guarding Dekulane. In truth, the commission is to protect the entire train Dekulane will be traveling on, because if it is presented as only protecting him, Julie will almost certainly reject it. Baron, however, urges him to accept, pointing out that a successful mission will raise their order's reputation and improve their financial situation. Even so, the vice-captain worries about Julie's reaction, but Baron cuts him off, saying that their captain will never let her personal feelings affect their duty. With that assurance, the vice-captain finally agrees to approach Julie about the commission, while Baron stays behind, his face marked with dark and unspoken thoughts. Berkt, also called Alpines, is a towering highland in the northern continent, standing 3,500 meters above sea level, a land that commands authority and respect. It is the seat of the Elders, an elite group of mages whose power stretches across every magical school, with the magic tower being central to its influence. What makes Berkt truly unique is the floating island of mages, where even legendary sorcerers must obey the decisions made. Because of its immense power, Berkt is seen as the central pillar of the magical world, and the rare summoning assemblies held only once in decades are considered the greatest of honors, though at the same time whispered as a dangerous path, often likened to a mage's grave. As preparations for the latest assembly unfold, life continues on the train to Bercht platform, where workers are checked and routines carried out. A silver-haired girl, responsible for overseeing the process, nods in approval to confirm all is in order. Soon after, she announces the arrival of a man in a sharp suit with a blank face, accompanied by a boy who buzzes with excitement, marveling at the sight of snow in April. Suddenly, the silver-haired girl informs the professor that from this point forward, the Freyheim Order will handle the train's guard duty for the first half of the journey. The professor maintains composure, though he notices Julie panicking, her face flickering from pale white to bright red in seconds. Despite her inner turmoil, she stiffens her posture and assures him they will ensure safety and smooth travel. In that moment, Julie recalls the professor's words telling her to smile once a month, sparking frantic thoughts about whether this is the right time to grin, beam, or just manage a faint smile. Confused, she questions the point of such a ridiculous suggestion. While she and the professor stand in awkward silence, others sense the heavy tension and quietly respect their captain, noticing that despite her hatred for the professor, she is putting effort into doing her best. Breaking the tense atmosphere, Baran finally appears, declaring he will take over the guard duty. The professor studies him carefully, noting the strong aura of a man who appears suddenly yet carries authority. One comrade laughs loudly, slaps Baran on the shoulder, and tells him to quit the act before introducing him properly as Baran, a highly skilled and widely respected figure in their order, assuring everyone that with him in charge, they are in capable hands. Still not satisfied, the professor continues to examine Baran with his sharp, discerning gaze. He doesn't sense anything unusual from Baran and figures it is just his mind overthinking, so he lets it go. Baran explains that the mages have strict security, with one escort assigned to each cabin, and quickly volunteers to guard their cabin himself. With that settled, it is time for departure. Julie wishes them a safe trip before hurrying off, though she glances back to throw the professor a stiff, almost painful smile. The professor, completely confused by her behavior, has no idea what is wrong, while her subordinate wonders if she is thinking straight, though he realizes she has kept her word. Hours later, the professor settles comfortably on the train and tells Baran to take a nap since they have plenty of time, which Baran gladly does. Left alone with his thoughts, the professor considers the summon from Berkt, known as the Mage's Grave, and thinks about why Berkt holds such dominance as the pillar of the magic world, especially since each summoning assembly seems to bring unexpected chaos. Aware of the high chance of a train attack, he recalls how the original Decalane dies here in a battle of wits, and he is determined not to repeat that reckless mistake. To survive, he considers buying information to find the safest train, though the original Decalane probably would have handled it better. Since taking over Decalane's body, he has cut ties with dark connections and instead tightened his security, training in a legendary martial arts technique that requires deep comprehension. Seeing Alan asleep is strange, since days earlier he had cried with joy at being allowed to join the trip to Bercht, though the professor regrets bringing him after spotting his runny nose, thanks to his own germophobia. Still, he acknowledges Alan's ambition. As the train nears Bercht, the professor is surprised at how smooth the ride has been. Using his Midas hand, he has enhanced his suit, jacket and shoes to maximize his defenses, upgraded his wood steel shurikens and scattered them throughout the train, and even strengthened Alan's clothes with protective enchantments. He has also upgraded their robes, though heavy use of Midas hand has left his mana lower than usual. Despite being well prepared, he wishes nothing would happen and longs for a peaceful journey. Letting out a sigh of relief, he hopes everything will stay calm, but as always, fate has other plans. Without warning, the front of the train erupts in flames. Snowy mountains pass by a few days before Deculane's departure, and he asks Sylvia to put her book down for once. Trying to spark small talk, he asks if she is buried under endless assignments at the Magic Tower. She nods but admits she sometimes skips classes. Though clearly annoyed by the whole situation, he lets it slide, reassuring her it isn't a big deal. Her father even adds a few words of praise, acknowledging her efforts and reminding her that she is doing well, even if her eyes are fixed on becoming an archmage. Sylvia scoffs at the idea, saying there is no point dreaming of such a future if she can't even handle the basics. Still, she wants to hear Decalane's theories. Without wasting time, she asks her father why he has chosen to leave earlier than expected, especially since Brecht's assembly is still days away. With a sigh, her father explains that the journey to Brecht is not just important, but dangerous, known as the Graveyard of Mages. At first she thinks it is nothing more than a bedtime story, but his serious tone startles her. He tells her that each summoning of Brecht always costs lives and some mages never return. 15 years ago, 11 died. He reminds her that receiving an invitation to Brecht is proof of their family's prestige, and as one of the chosen 20 families, they cannot refuse. Attending secures their name in history, but any family that fails to appear is quickly expelled, replaced by another without hesitation. He then tests Sylvia's understanding, asking if she realizes that this gathering is more than a simple assembly. it is also a ruthless way of clearing out weaker families. Shocked, she realizes the trip is as much about ambition and power as it is about tradition. Sorcerers see it as a chance to eliminate rivals and carve their own place in history. With that, her father explains the real reason for leaving early. His sources have revealed plans of an ambush on the late departing trains, so departing sooner gives them a better chance of avoiding it. By taking her along, he wants Sylvia to see the cruelty of the world firsthand and prepare her to face it with clarity and strength. Among the 12 traditional families, he firmly believes that all sorcerers deserve punishment for causing such chaos, and without hesitation, he remarks that dying on the way to Berkt is practically the same as dying a natural magical death. A few days later, Alan and the professor are resting peacefully on the train, enjoying their slumber without a worry, when suddenly, a massive explosion shakes everything, jolting Baron and the professor awake while Alan panics at the sight of a blinding flash. Fear rises within him as he struggles to speak, only to jump in terror when he realizes the train is actually floating in midair. Thankfully, the professor reacts quickly, using telekinesis to grab hold of the train and safely put it back on the tracks, a skill he is wise to practice before their journey, even more useful than Estarn's martial arts. Meanwhile, a group of thugs on the roof are plotting to hijack the train, motivated by the enormous payout promised for attacking a train full of professors. Determined, they launch their strike. Unaware of the mistake they've made, smirking at their foolishness, the professor wastes no time pulling out shards of wood and steel, cutting them down without mercy. Alan is left shocked, his jaw dropping as he watches, until the professor knocks him out to spare him from the horror. Without delay, he orders Baron to escort Alan and the passengers to safety while he personally deals with the intruders. Tossing bodies off the train, he warns the remaining attackers that they have chosen death by crossing him. With Baron guarding Alan, the professor gets to work, repairing the train with telekinesis, reducing the explosive damage, and finishing off the thugs. Though the effort drains a heavy amount of his mana, leaving 103,657 in his reserves. Once the situation is stabilized, Baron calmly reports that all passengers have been evacuated safely. Yet the professor feels uneasy about him, unsettled by the man's gaze, which carries a strange intensity. At first, he brushes it off as simple caution, but then Baron's body suddenly radiates the murderous aura of the villain's fate, completely catching him off guard. Realizing too late that he lets his guard down, the professor faces the truth as Baron finally reveals his real nature. Admiring the professor's ability to survive, Baron nevertheless declares that he intends to kill him with his own hands, leaving no room for doubt about his betrayal. With everyone safely evacuated, Baron believes his duty is done, and now it is time for him to claim his reward, which for him means ending Professor Deculin's life. For the professor, this sudden betrayal comes at the worst possible moment, with his mana reserves already dangerously low, leaving him shocked and unprepared. He never once thinks his own guard will raise a blade against him. Even in this tense moment, curiosity takes over, and he asks Baron if he is acting on his own or if someone else is behind this plot. When he suggests that Julie might be the mastermind, Baron explodes in rage, his murderous aura intensifying as he glares at the professor, practically choking him with bloodlust. Furious, he orders the professor never to stain Julie's name with his mouth again, warning him that a single slip could earn him a punishment far worse than death. Though he insists Julie would never stoop to such lengths, his hatred burns as he declares that he himself will kill the professor in her name. With that twisted devotion shining in his eyes, the professor realizes something is deeply wrong with this man he once trusted. To his horror, one of Freyheim's most respected knights has become a rogue, consumed by madness. With only a fraction of his mana left, Deculin doubts if he can survive against this monster, but there's no time to waste. Baron, no longer pretending to be a guard, launches forward at terrifying speed, his blade cutting through the air with pure intent to kill. Caught off guard, the professor is forced to release his telekinesis holding the train, sending it lurching off balance. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Sylvia's servant knocks on her door, asking if she wants to try Brecht's famous snow cones. Without much thought, she tells him to eat them himself. He then informs her that aside from Professor Deculin and Rewind, everyone else has already arrived, and even wonders if Sylvia is waiting for someone important. She doesn't respond, and he quietly leaves her alone. Left in silence, Sylvia drifts into her own memories, a wave of guilt washing over her as she recalls the day she visited her late mother, Celia von Illad. On that day, she had poured her heart out in front of the grave, rambling about her struggles at school and especially how Professor Decoulain irritated her with endless assignments, acting as though he were the only teacher who mattered. Just as she vented her frustrations, a faint sound caught her attention, and out of curiosity, she peeked past the tombstones, only to be stunned at the sight of Decoulain himself standing there, his posture noble and calm. He never gives the impression of a mourner, yet there he is, quietly paying his respects at a grave, leaving Sylvia utterly bewildered. Honestly, he never stops surprising her. Sylvia is stunned when she sees a single tear slide down Decoulain's cheek, completely shattering the cold, untouchable image she had always associated with him. The icy professor crying is something she never thought possible, and for the first time she doesn't see the arrogant, high and mighty man who constantly belittled others, but someone who has lost someone precious. That one tear feels unforgettable, etched in her mind like a shooting star. Her father's warnings then rush back to her. Rumors of shady groups plotting to attack late-arriving trains. Panic grips her as she realizes Decoulain hasn't reached Berkt yet, and recalling his lecture notes, she feels inspired to act. Pulling out a magic stone, she focuses on its energy. With magic built on 3 attributes tied to the caster and possessing the 3 primary colors of mana, she channels her power into shaping the stone into a bird, which she names Swift. Pouring her intent into it, she sends the bird flying, her eyes through its wings. Meanwhile, Professor Decoulain is struggling with broken bones, though Iron Man's resilience keeps him alive as he tries to recover. He hides, hoping to buy some time, but Baron refuses to relent. The rogue knight hunts him down, taunting him like a predator playing with prey. Decoulain hurls wood steel in desperation, but Baron dodges with ease, his protective chi deflecting blows. He even mocks Decoulain's stubbornness, calling it a pitiful attempt to cling to life. Their clash grows more vicious, and Decoulain admits to himself that Baron holds the upper hand. Even at full strength, defeating him would not be simple, but now with his mana almost depleted and exhaustion heavy on his body, the odds are stacked against him. Still, Decoulain refuses to give up. That's when he recalls his last resort, resolve. This skill summons a powerful surge of mental energy that sustains him until the fight ends. Even if his mind wavers, his body will keep standing, unyielding, while the magic continues to hold. With this, he refuses to bow, no matter what. Baron, consumed by bloodlust, goes berserk, attacking like a wild beast and swinging his sword with lethal intent. Decoulain knows that one solid strike will kill him, and he wonders briefly if he will wake again in his office or if this is truly his end. In that instant, a spray of blood fills the air, staining the scene red, just as Swift, Sylvia's conjured bird, arrives at the crash site, carrying her sight into the chaos. Baron's instincts go wild, his mind burning with the need for vengeance, and he launches himself forward, ready to finish things once and for all. But suddenly something strange interrupts him mid-charge. The space around him ripples unnaturally, throwing off his balance and making him stumble, forcing him to lower his guard. In that split second, Decoulain's little trick works perfectly, catching Baron completely by surprise. A flash of steel follows, and in an instant Baron's hand is sliced clean off, blood bursting in a fountain as his screams tear through the air. The sound echoes in the chaos, but Decoulain, still not sure what exactly has caused the sudden opening, knows only one thing: it is time to end the fight. Gathering the very last trace of mana left in him, he hurls a wood-steel weapon that smashes into Baron, throwing him further off balance. Hanging on desperately at the edge of the train, clinging with one remaining hand and a dagger, his life dangles by a thread. Decoulain steps forward, a victor's smirk carved into his face. Gasping heavily, Baron demands to know what trick has been played, what hidden card Decoulain has used to suddenly flip the fight. But the truth is, even Decoulain has no idea what force has intervened at that exact moment. Still, with the battle at its end, Decoulain sees a chance to finally get answers and presses Baron to explain why he is so intent on killing him when he has never wronged him personally. Baron spits out his answer, that Decoulain has committed unforgivable sins against his liege, sins that demand retribution. That makes Decoulain's thoughts immediately turn to Julie. Raising an eyebrow, he asks if this is all really about her, pointing out that Julie herself has never ordered such a thing. Pushing harder, he demands to know exactly who Julie is to Baran. Struggling, his strength fading fast, Baran has no reply. And that silence cuts him deeper than any blade. He believes Deculin will never understand anyway. His mind drifts back into memory, to the very first time he meets Julie. She is once praised by the Frisia family for resolving trouble, and the trouble is none other than young Baran himself, who has been framed after a fight with a noble's spoiled son named Jason. Jason's mother loudly defends her child, proclaiming his kindness, while branding Baran as violent and crude, pressing charges for assault and trespassing. She is ready to throw him back into the gutter she thinks he belongs in. Julie is stunned, unable to believe that this scrawny, ragged boy has even managed to sneak into noble territory by climbing walls. Yet rather than let him be cast aside, she steps in and takes responsibility herself, personally reporting him to calm the furious noblewoman. On the way, Baran rages about the injustice, insisting he has only defended himself, asking how that can be a crime. Julie listens quietly before acknowledging that the Frisia family does indeed have a cruel reputation and that his words might carry some truth. But before he can get carried away again, she shuts him down cold, telling him bluntly that defending himself does not excuse him from striking others whenever he pleases. With determined eyes, she offers him a choice. Follow her, and she will teach him control and discipline. Baran, ever the fool, only asks if food and drinks are included. That ridiculous answer seals his path, and so he meets the woman who will become his liege. Julie takes him in, and soon he joins the Night Order under her guidance. His abrasive personality keeps others away, few want anything to do with him, but Julie stays, the only one who truly sees value in him, the only person who cares. She is steadfast, a figure of justice and kindness who never turns away from helping others. To Baran, life makes sense as long as he is at her side. Over time, his respect for her turns into something deeper, into love, but he never confesses it. He believes such emotions would only weigh her down, would only be a burden. So he keeps them hidden, unspoken, living with the quiet pain of loving someone he can never have. And yet that love drives his obsession, convincing him that Deculin is destined to destroy her. In his mind, Deculin is the cause of every disaster, the ripple that sets off every tragedy, and eventually the downfall of Julie herself. That is why Baran has to kill him. Deculin, unfazed by his outburst, simply tells him he is wrong, swearing that he will change the outcome, that he will not allow such a fate to take place. He promises he will never harm Julie and even extends a hand to Baran, offering him trust. But Baran, eyes blazing with mana and rage, rejects it all, unmoved by Deculin's words, still determined to strike him down. Deculin lets out a heavy sigh, realizing that such stubbornness will only leave Julie with heartbreak and knows what has to be done. With no other choice, he kicks Baran off the train. Elsewhere, Julie's subordinates catch her deep in thought, suspecting she is worried for him, but she brushes it aside, saying he can take care of himself. As Baran falls through the endless sky, tears stream freely from his eyes, his only wish left being for his liege Julie to find happiness, even if it will never be with him. Swift soars freely like a bird, giving Sylvia a full view of the crash site, and with that perspective she finally pieces everything together. She realizes Deculin has killed his own guard, who falls off the cliff into nothingness, and she understands clearly how things spiral into such a tragic end. Knight Baran is the one to strike first, trying to kill Professor Deculin, but he fails, forcing Deculin to defend himself by kicking him off the train. Just then, Siri pulls Sylvia's focus back, reminding her that the assembly is about to begin. Though she tries to push her worries aside, her thoughts cling to Deculin, and she silently hopes he will make it in time without more trouble. Meanwhile, excitement spreads among the guards at the sight of their vice chief, Lily FM from the Security Bureau, arriving on patrol to inspect the scene of the explosion and attack. The guards confirm she is in the right place, treating it as no surprise given the upcoming Berkt assembly. Lilia immediately asks if there are any casualties, and the guards admit yes, reporting that 2 people are missing and possibly injured, Knight Baron and Professor Decollane, which stuns her. They then direct her to their supervisor for further details, but her eyes soon catch the small body of a child lying unconscious from the shock of the crash. Relieved that the child is only passed out, she presses on with her investigation, carefully recording statements from everyone present. Witnesses explain that a knight has rescued them, evacuating passengers before the crash, and many remember the strange moment when the train lifts mid-air, though by the time they come to, it has already gone over the cliff. Another survivor suggests the assassin's second strike causes the disaster, and though the mid-air claim seems doubtful, he even produces a photo he snaps in shock, offering proof. Lilia wonders if someone has actually lifted the train with magic. Suddenly, a chilling telepathic voice fills her head, bluntly declaring that Knight Baron is dead. It reveals that Baron has orchestrated the entire attack to kill Decollane but fails, and that the professor has survived. The eerie message unsettles her, though it provides valuable confirmation for her investigation. Looking around, she sees no suspicious figure who could have sent it, leaving her uneasy and with more questions than answers. Then, just as she tries to process it, someone reports that a man is walking toward them from the crash site. She turns and spots a calm, composed figure with a noble bearing making his way forward. Exhausted, bruised, and deep in thought, it is none other than Professor Decollane himself. He hasn't yet noticed the crowd or Lilia watching, but inside he knows one thing: if not for that strange event at the right moment, he would already be dead. If things had gone differently, Decollane would have been remembered as the man who was taken down by a nameless knight, losing forever the chance to uncover who or what has saved him. Just like Baron, he might have ended up shattered at the bottom of the cliff, powerless and forgotten. The truth hits him hard. He has no chance against his own guard, leaving him with the haunting question of who has stepped in to save him. Before he can think further, Lilia calls out, confirming his safety and introducing herself as Lilia FME from the Security Bureau. She tells him he needs to fill out a report to aid the investigation, but Decollane ignores her words and instead asks for the time. When she says it is 3:30, he realizes he has 6 hours left to make it back. Determined to carry out her duty, Lilia presses for details, but he isn't interested and instead asks if this is the only way to Berkt. Annoyed, she replies there are also road and sea routes. Before she can continue, Decollane vanishes in an instant. Neither she nor the workers have any idea where he goes, and she realizes he has used accelerate magic to slip away. After everything, the train disaster, telekinesis, assassins, and even fighting Baron, he still has enough power to use such a high-level spell, which shocks and angers her, proving Lockhart's suspicions are correct. Meanwhile, at the Berkt assembly, the Great Hall is already full at 9:30, with Sylvia anxiously waiting for Decollane's return. The host formally welcomes everyone for answering the summons when suddenly a surge of mana shakes the room, sending chills through Sylvia. She recognizes it as belonging to Dezekton, the great leader of Berkt, a living legend who has abandoned the outside world. Watching him, she knows that to ever claim the Archmage title, she will need to reach his level. The roll call begins, announcing Giltion of the Illide family, Ethansil of the Brand family, Baron of the Veorad family, and Ihelm of the Rewind family. But when the name Eucline of the Decollane family is called, silence follows. By tradition, the host repeats it 3 times, warning that failure to respond means expulsion from the 12 sorcerers. Gossip spreads instantly, people whispering that the downfall of the Decollane family has begun with Eucline. They recall their first summoning 200 years ago, saying this will mark their end. Sylvia hears the mocking words, how they ridicule the current head of the family as a disgrace compared to his ancestors. Laughter echoes across the hall as the host prepares to strike the Decollane name from the records. But just as the host is about to move on, the doors burst open with a force that silences the room. Standing tall at the entrance is Eucline of the Decollane family, marking his attendance and stunning everyone present. The meeting that begins in tense silence soon moves forward smoothly, with the first issue being the demon that has appeared in the Mountain of Darkness, and everyone quickly agrees without argument. Ethansil, head of divinity and House Bran, stresses that more attention should be given to demons appearing near the capital, suggesting cooperation between the schools and the church, with mages sent to investigate suspicious regions, and her proposal is accepted. After this, the council pauses for a short break. Deculain, drained from running to Berkt without rest, sits quietly, his mana and stamina empty, yet he still looks sharp and composed, his noble traits as frustratingly perfect as ever. As others leave the round table, a worried Alan appears with teary eyes, apologizing for being late and saying he is told to wait outside once the meeting starts. He asks if his teacher is fine, and Deculain assures him he is, though inside he doubts the boy's innocence. After the strange incident on the train, he is convinced something about Alan's identity is off, the feeling reminding him of a movie from his past life. So he decides to keep Alan close, watching him carefully until he uncovers the truth. Once the break ends, the council returns to deal with a far more serious and divisive matter: the Blood Shroud sorcerer killing mages. This issue, unlike the last, is not easy to settle. Barun, head of House Viarad, slams the table and calls the Blood Shrouds cockroaches hiding and multiplying inside human society, poisoning their lands, demanding their eradication. Ethansil immediately rejects such harsh words, reminding everyone they cannot even properly identify blood shrouds. Barun pushes harder, insisting they can create a method from the little they know and claiming the Imperial Magic Tower has enough strength to wipe them out completely. Deculain keeps silent, knowing the argument will escalate, as blood shrouds can recognize each other, meaning they are organized and led by someone powerful. Baron believes this points to sinister schemes, while Ethansil refuses to be swayed by such baseless fear. Most of the council stays silent, but many quietly agree with Barun, disturbed by the thought of a hidden blood shroud leader. Memories of 60 years ago resurface, when hesitation cost countless mage lives, and the heavy tension in the room is suffocating. Finally, after a long and uneasy pause, Giltion von Ludwig Illide speaks and shifts the focus, calling on Deculain of Uklein to give his thoughts. Professor Deculain, coming from a long line of powerful exorcists who have always led the fight against demons, knows well that blind hatred only brings grief and disaster. He believes suppressing the blood shrouds now would be wrong, and even if he cannot stop the council's decision, he can at least try to delay it for the sake of the future. The world already labels blood shrouds as enemies, which he considers a terrible mistake. Speaking up, he explains that while they were seen as foes long ago, reviewing history shows the bloodshed started from misunderstandings. He cites the Rodra witch incident 237 years ago, when Rodran was falsely accused and punished, leading to mass suppression and the deaths of countless blood shrouds, who then retaliated. More violence follows, and 60 years ago things worsen when a mana stone mine is discovered on blood shroud land, and greedy nobles, including one of Deculain's own ancestors, use lies to justify taking it. Barun refuses to listen, consumed by rage, insisting blood shrouds are born with demonic energy and that the Uklein family knows it best. Deculain rejects this, clarifying his family's role as demon hunting, not killing blood shrouds, and warns Barun that accusing humans of being demons is a serious crime and that such hateful words could turn against him. Enraged, Barun storms out, leaving the council unable to conclude, so the matter is pushed to the next day. Later, Giltheon shows concern for his daughter Sylvia, not wanting to part from her, though she is indifferent and even welcomes distance from her father. He reminds her that Berkt mages carry unusually high mana density, making strange phenomena possible, and urges her to read the hotel rules carefully. Sylvia, once in her room, dismisses the long list of rules as fear tactics for children. She changes, rests, and soon drifts to sleep, until she is suddenly stirred awake. Feeling thirsty, she drinks some water, but then the drowsiness leaves as she senses overwhelming mana around her. To her shock, the walls of her room peel away and her bed and belongings vanish, leaving her standing in an unfamiliar hallway. Alarmed, she pulls out the list of regulations, quickly scanning to see if she has unknowingly broken a rule when out of the corner of her eye, a sudden bright light catches her attention. The hotel rules clearly state that once a guest lies in bed, They must not wake until morning or risk finding themselves elsewhere. But Sylvia breaks this rule by getting up for water and ends up trapped in a strange place. At her previous stay in the second hall, nothing like this happens. But now, being near the assembly of elders where mana is stronger, she is pulled into a spatial shift. She thinks staying in her room would be enough, but it isn't. Trying to stay calm, she searches for a way out, though the dark presence around her makes it impossible. Her instincts scream to run, but she has no idea where she is or where to go. The Rosary Hotel is supposed to be a single story, yet she now sees glowing stairs leading somewhere unknown. The rules warn never to go up or down such stairs, just as they warn against looking into any open doors. Sylvia keeps her eyes closed and runs, hoping to find a way back. She knocks on doors for help, though the rules also say no one should respond to noises outside. Still, in desperation, she tries again and again until, finally, one door opens. A bright light pours out, and a familiar voice asks if she is lost. It is Professor Deculain. His calm, expressionless face gives her comfort, and he invites her inside, where the ominous presence fades away. By the fire's warmth, Sylvia explains how she has left her bed only briefly and ended up in the haunted hall. The professor isn't surprised. Berkt is full of magical phenomena, and spirits stripped of their minds often linger. Looking at him, noble, steady, and ageless, she feels only he could have saved her. Her thoughts break when a strange gurgle comes from the door and black slime seeps through the cracks, shaping itself into a vengeful spirit hungry for life. Deculain doesn't flinch and tells her to stay still. Suddenly, two glowing minerals fly through the air, tearing the ghost apart with controlled force. Sylvia is stunned. She has never seen wandering spirits destroyed like that. The professor explains it is a special killing magic, though he admits such a thing is nothing to boast about, since magic is not meant only for destruction. Hearing his words after saving her stirs something deep in Sylvia, and she feels the urge to prove herself. She summons a flowing flame, catching his attention from the book he is reading, before moving on to unleash her crackling lightning. Sylvia then moves on to her next display, shaping metal into flower-like figures with a blue shine, followed by her graceful goblin fire. After showing the spells she is most proud of, she grows annoyed that the professor barely notices. To grab his attention, she tries a half-hearted glittering light spell, and this time it works. Deculain calmly corrects a small instability in the air magic circle she has embedded in the fire, and the result turns out beautifully. Encouraged, Sylvia asks him what her weakness is and what holds her back. Deculain dismisses the question, telling her to find her own flaws, just like Ephorine does. Sylvia pouts, claiming he has helped Ephorine, but he clarifies that Ephorine has discovered her shortcomings herself. Frustrated, Sylvia still listens as the professor reminds her that time is on her side. If she keeps her dedication, progress will come naturally. Like everyone else, she has to take one step at a time and avoid shortcuts. He even admits she is one of only 3 people with the talent to reach the peak of the magic world. Normally, such words would feel like empty praise, as she has heard since childhood, but from Deculain it feels genuine, making her feel reassured. Since it is late and unsafe to wander the halls, Sylvia sleeps on his bed while the professor spends the night at his desk reading. In the dead of night, he senses a strange golden light calling him outside, an energy unlike anything he has felt before. Always eager for hidden treasures, he goes out for a midnight stroll along the mountain path, despite it being haunted by sinister spirits. One apparition with twisted limbs tries to frighten him, but he ignores it completely, treating it like nothing. Eventually, he asks the spirit if it has seen any strong magical item nearby, but insulted by the casual question, the spirit flees in tears, cursing him in an unknown tongue. Annoyed at not getting an answer, Deculain keeps searching until he finds what he is looking for: a purified mana tree fragment struck by lightning. This rare fragment of mana tree is an exceptional crafting material. Since coming into this world, he has devoted himself fully to study and training but has hit a limit due to his average talent. With this fragment, he can craft a wand to strengthen himself and accelerate his growth. For a random late-night excursion, The discovery is far more rewarding than he expects. The next day, the meeting resumes with an uneasy mood, and as expected, Barun Veyorad begins again with his claims about demon blood in the blood shrouds. But this time Deculain counters him strongly, arguing that adding salt to water doesn't make the water salt, proving the flaw in his reasoning. Their heated exchange unsettles many sorcerers, and some begin to suspect the professor is siding with the enemy instead of humanity. They expect him to lead the call for blood shroud extermination, but instead, he stands against it, leaving even Giltion unsure of his intentions. Sylvia, sitting beside her father, senses the shifting opinions around the room, with many thinking Deculain has some hidden agenda, though in truth he is simply stating the obvious, but perception turns against him. With no resolution possible, the arbiters decide to delay the blood shroud debate until the next session to keep other issues from being stalled, and the rest of the agenda moves forward smoothly until the summit ends after several days. By then, Deculain has made enemies of Barun and Veyorad, something he does not want but accepts as the cost of buying time for the larger quest ahead. Staying in Berk a few extra days, he visits a magic shop he knows, considering how to use the purified mana tree fragment for his new wand and what other materials would suit it, when Alan suddenly points out someone he credits with saving his life during the train incident: Lilia Freeman, Vice Chief of the Security Bureau. Deculain and Alan invite her to join them for a meal to show their gratitude, and she accepts, thanking them while also revealing that the investigation into the train attack has concluded. Curious, Deculain asks about Baron, and she explains that he died in the ambush. As they eat, Lilia remains polite but cannot shake her doubts about Deculain, rooted in something Lockhart once told her. Under Imperial orders, the Mage Killer is sent to Rekordak, a prison for the worst offenders against magic and humanity, and Lilia herself arrests him. During interrogation, when he refuses to speak, she demands he use his power, and Lockhart, smirking, complies, releasing waves of nullifying magic that disable the surveillance camera, cutting them off from outside monitoring. Once she confirms they cannot be seen or heard, Vice Chief Lilia drops her professional mask, slamming her fist on the interrogation table and cursing Lockhart for being such a fool. She warns him not to be reckless, yet he keeps killing mages, staining their name and ruining the Blood Shroud plan. She wants nothing more than to kill him then and there, but if his identity as a Blood Shroud is exposed, it will destroy public opinion and make her position harder. Lockhart has no respect for her efforts, believing she is just clinging to the empire that despises their kind. Born with powers that mark them as different, Blood Shrouds are feared for their demonic abilities, though other races also carry such traits. His biggest mistake, however, is provoking Deculain when their role is only to watch the Euclines and intervene only if needed. Surprisingly, Lockhart calls Deculain a true noble, someone who should not be harmed, which confuses Lilia, given the man's many criminal cases in the Bureau. Still, Lockhart admires how Deculain treats Blood Shrouds as humans rather than demons and even spares him despite knowing his true origin and having the authority to kill him. Lockhart believes that if more nobles were like him, their people would not need to hide, but Lilia dismisses such talk as nonsense, since the Eucline's family has been at the front of slaughtering her kind. Lockhart argues that punishing descendants for their ancestors' sins is no different from demonic cruelty, but Lilia remains unconvinced. She knows her position is risky, but Blood Shrouds can pass for human easily, the only difference being a certain food they cannot eat. Shifting the subject, she notes rumors of the Emperor's failing health and the uncertainty of how a new ruler might treat Blood Shrouds, making it even more important to keep a low profile. For now, Lockhart remains imprisoned in Rekordak. Back at the table in the present, Lilia chews her steak while secretly studying Deculain, the so-called noble, but to her he is just another arrogant aristocrat. Then an unwelcome drunk staggers over, the smell of alcohol making her grimace, and Deculain calmly dismisses him without even looking up, but the intruder, Eihhelm, refuses to leave and tries to lecture him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, dire news strikes the Order of Freyheim. Julie, upon hearing that her trusted knight Baron has died escorting Deculain to Bersht, is shaken, and furious and desperate for answers, she rises and orders her men to prepare at once, determined to confront Deculain personally. Back in the restaurant, Vice Chief Lilia pauses awkwardly when her quiet meal is interrupted by Helm's loud and drunken entrance in the middle of the day. His stumbling steps and careless demeanor leave an unpleasant air hanging over the table. She immediately recognizes him as the spoiled brat who currently holds the position of head of the Rewind family, a man both powerful and reckless. Caught between him and Dekulain, two figures tied to influential and opposing noble clans, Lilia feels uneasy and trapped in a dangerous situation where one wrong move could mean making enemies she cannot afford. She silently braces herself to simply observe the exchange. Helm wastes no time launching into Dekulain. His cloudy mind and sharp tongue press him for answers about his strange stance at the council meeting, because he simply cannot understand why a Ukline, whose bloodline is infamous for hunting demons and showing no mercy, would suddenly defend blood shrouds so openly and passionately. Hearing this accusation out loud nearly makes Lilia lose her composure, for it is a revelation she has not expected to overhear, and she has to suppress her reaction before it gives her away. Helm, however, is relentless. He reminds the professor that in the past he has declared his desire to wipe out the blood shrouds without hesitation, and before that he has always spoken about how such beings had no right to exist. He now questions what has changed, and the answer is that nothing is clear, only that Dekulain's position has shifted in a way that baffles others. To drive his point further, Helm brings up the fact that Dekulain once even published a paper at the university condemning blood shrouds and calling for their eradication. His sudden reversal looks less like compassion and more like suspicious hypocrisy. His goading continues as he accuses the professor of secretly acquiring a blood shroud slave, possibly using them for forbidden research, and trying to brand him as a talentless fraud whose reputation is built on lies. At that point, Alan, usually quiet, shocks Lilia by fiercely defending his master. His words are filled with passion and loyalty as he insists the professor would never do such things. Dekulain, however, stays calm and collected. He gently dabs his lips with a napkin before telling his assistant to quiet down. He remarks dryly that it is not worth wasting energy arguing with someone whose mind is as rotten as spoiled cheese. It is a sharp dismissal that makes it clear what he thinks of Helm's shallow reasoning. Surprisingly, Helm does not fly into a rage but instead smirks bitterly. He reminds Dekulain that only 3 months remain until the university's big research presentation where the professor's supposed brilliance, or lack of it, will be exposed for all to see. Then everyone will know if his words have any weight at all. Lilia, meanwhile, struggles to remain composed, but inside her mind is spinning. She is filled with questions she cannot answer, because she cannot fathom why a Ukline would deliberately side with the blood shrouds, making enemies of nearly every other faction in the process. Yet she cannot shake the thought that maybe Lockhart's last cryptic words before his imprisonment carry some truth. The seed of doubt about Dekulain firmly takes root in her heart that day. The very next day Dekulain acts on his plans. He seeks out one of the most skilled craftsmen, Rockalok, to commission a new wand. The meeting triggers a sub-quest called Rockalok's Wand, which requires him to meet conditions such as having enough fame, showing kindness, bringing top-tier materials, and making multiple visits. Fortunately, Dekulain has already fulfilled every one of these requirements, and so the quest clears effortlessly. He is rewarded with a point of store currency and a finely crafted wand that will serve him well in the future. With that done, he and Alan finally board the train heading back to the Empire. Their journey is meant to bring them home to the Magic Tower, but fate ensures the trip is uncomfortable. In the same carriage sits Berun, the hostile noble who glares at Dekulain with undisguised resentment the entire way. His presence is heavy with animosity, though he makes no move to start an actual confrontation. The ride drags on with a thick, unspoken tension. Though no open conflict breaks out, the professor can feel the weight of hatred pressing in on him, making the journey exhausting in its own way. Through it all, Dekulain silently longs for nothing more than to return to the familiar safety of the tower, knowing that his choices have already made him enemies he will have to deal with sooner or later. Finally, they step off the tense carriage with only one more transfer before leaving the snowy scenery behind. Waiting on the platform is Julie with the entire Freyheim order, meeting them without pleasantries as she immediately asks her fiancé about the ambush. already aware of Baron's death. Though Deculin does not know what version of events the Order has heard, it is clear they resent that he alone survived, while Julie looks heartbroken, only wanting to know what Baron's last moments were like. Her grief-filled eyes make it impossible for him to reveal the cruel truth that her knight betrayed him. So instead of crushing her with guilt, he lies and simply says Baron had been emotional. Julie politely thanks him before leaving with her men to escort her comrade's remains, while Deculin is left lamenting, ashamed of how he still cannot shake the old Decal's feelings for her. After they leave, Alan mutters how rude the knights are, but Deculin brushes it off as foolishness, unaware that Sylvia has seen the exchange from afar. When she runs up to press him on why he has held back, she refuses to explain further, instead handing him an old book as a gift before dashing away, leaving both him and Alan confused. Weary from the endless trip, the professor finally boards the last train, wishing only for rest, while elsewhere Julie presses local authorities for details of the ambush. She learns that during the first attack he and Baron had saved civilians, but when the train overturned in the second assault, Baron had fallen, with the surviving car clinging miraculously to the cliff. Though nothing of her knight remains to take home, she accepts their report, drowning in grief at the loss of her right hand. Back at the Eucline house, Deculin faces his sister's fury after she discovers he has written yet another family check in Berkt despite their dire finances. Yariel scolds him that they will be bankrupt in 2 months, while he tries to defend the expensive wand commission as necessary, though the news of their dwindling funds hits him hard, a wake-up call to act. To calm her, he leads her to the warehouse to show the treasures he has collected recently, hoping to reassure her, but instead it only incenses Yariel further, who thinks he is flaunting wealth while ignoring their ruin. Her anger spills out in coarse words unbecoming of a lady, leaving Deculin both offended and troubled by the mounting strain. Yariel nearly loses control, furious that her brother is driving the family toward bankruptcy while still criticizing her speech. But Deculin ignores her rage and focuses on why his wealthy magnate ability reacts to the antiques. He realizes only recently, as he was preparing to leave Berkt, that he can use his other power, Midas' hand, to increase their value. He chooses a vase at the front as his first test, while Yariel mocks him for looking ridiculous. Yet when he finishes, the vase's description changes, awakening its hidden potential as an artifact that can hold flowers that never wilt and whose petals can heal fatigue, turning his 2.5 million ILN purchase into something priceless. While Yariel sees it as a reckless, temporary fix that will ruin them, Deculin ignores her and says it is time to get to work, refusing to argue further so she can oppose him. Meanwhile, at the university's magic tower, the new Magic Exploration Club has secured their own room, where 5 commoner students enjoy themselves by playing cards. Ephorine dominates the game by laying down a full house with kings, showing her determination to avoid cleaning duties and stunning her friends who know she rarely loses. In that warm, cheerful space she marvels at how far she has come, recalling how she comes from a disgraced baron family that cannot even afford tuition, endured constant bullying from noble students, and faced hostility from professors, nearly being expelled. Now she can relax with friends and enjoy ordinary fun, even declaring how much she loves the club, though a friend cautions her not to be too loud since trouble can always return. Just then, Professor Leland storms in with Beck, furious to see commoners enjoying themselves, sneering at their club sign and insulting Ephorine as a lowlife from Sylvia's trial, while Beck laughs cruelly. Though her anger grows, Ephorine stands firm and explains they have official permission, which only enrages Leland more as he demands to know who could have sponsored such a group. Before he can finish, Deculin himself appears, his overwhelming presence silencing the room as he declares he has co-signed the club and bears down on Leland with terrifying pressure, asking if there is any problem with him authorizing a new student organization. Deculin's presence immediately eases the commoner students, though Ephorine still feels cautious of him, while Leland turns pale under the oppressive aura of the head professor. He overhears Leland's insults from across the hall and now presses him without saying much, letting his sheer presence do the work since he is in no mood to argue after dealing with his sister earlier. Leland panics and quickly changes his tune, putting on the act of a kind teacher by claiming that the clubroom is too empty. Insisting his anger comes only from wanting the students to have better equipment and even volunteering to take responsibility for furnishing the room himself. Daekulin allows him to do this as a way of making him atone, leaving Leland to choke on his own excuses. On his way out, Daekulin pauses to glance at Beck and coldly remarks that cockroaches will always behave like cockroaches, a comment that leaves the brat fuming though powerless to retaliate, and with that the professor heads to his office. Later that day, Daekulin holds his first class since returning from Bercht, and the students buzz with anticipation, especially Sylvia, who notices her classmates whispering about the train incident featured in the Wizard Journal with an image of the floating carriage. They speculate whether their professor will share details, though unlike his old self, the new Daekulin avoids bragging and instead goes straight into the lesson, controlling a piece of chalk telekinetically as he introduces the topic of pure elements and magic interference. He explains that interference means disrupting another mage's power, but before explaining further, he has prepared a practical test to ground the theory. Alan carries in a box of mineral fragments, and with a flick of his finger Daekulin lifts them into the air, sending one to hover in front of each student, an effortless display of telekinesis that leaves the class both stunned and fascinated, though Sylvia looks unimpressed and Ephraim more curious than awed. Daekulin then reveals that these are magic stones, each valued at 3,000 elne, and that he will maintain only the telekinesis spell while the students must attempt interfering with it to claim the stone, with the promise that anyone who succeeds can keep the expensive fragment as their own. The challenge immediately electrifies the room and sets the stage for a lesson none of them will soon forget. The moment money is mentioned, Ephraim's excitement goes through the roof and she nearly screams if not for her friend pulling her back down to reality. Daekulin pretends not to notice and instead explains that blocking spells is just as important as interfering with them. And with that the practical begins, every student trying their own way to pull the floating magic stone free from his telekinetic control. Silence fills the room as all focus turns to their stones. And though Daekulin once stopped a train from plummeting, he has only recently mastered beginner-level telekinesis. He uses this exercise to practice precision while testing whether his power can hold against the combined efforts of 150 talented newcomers, 2 of whom stand above the rest. Ephraim is desperate to win the stone for its value since her scholarship funds are nearly gone, while Sylvia is fueled by pride and the need to prove herself after Daekulin remarks that Ephraim has overcome her flaws alone. One is driven by money and the other by pride, creating a fierce rivalry, while the rest of the class struggle, trembling and even bleeding from the strain of trying to force their mana past his spell. Alan quietly praises his master's composure as the professor endures the pressure of all 150 students without faltering, though in truth the effort is beginning to weigh on him as no one succeeds for a long time. Finally, one stone breaks free from his control, claimed by Sylvia von Josephine Illide, the golden prodigy, who immediately looks at Ephraim with a confident smile, proud to stand victorious in their rivalry. Daekulin himself moves to Sylvia's desk, congratulating her for being the first, something he has expected from her eventually, and he wonders if anyone else will be able to break his control. He is nearly ready to end the test after seeing the rest falter when suddenly a bright green light flares, drawing both his and Sylvia's attention. Ephraim, through sheer determination, has broken through as well, winning her stone with blood, sweat, and tears. Though Sylvia finishes first, the narrow difference of only a few seconds leaves her shaken, realizing she cannot afford to relax in their rivalry. The rest of the class looks like they are all about to collapse, yet not a single magic stone moves from Daekulin's grasp. Some students vomit on their desks, others bleed heavily, and most faint from exhaustion before the professor finally ends the exercise, calling them pathetic for failing to even make his stones tremble, then ordering them to rest and clean up the disgusting mess. Once the room is tidied, Julie asks Ephraim how she manages to succeed when everyone else aside from Sylvia has lost both dignity and strength, and Ephraim admits she nearly fails herself but is lucky enough to have a sudden insight during the process. She explains that though she knows little about telekinesis, Whenever she tries to push through Deculine's magic, it feels like breaking through something solid. Meanwhile, Sylvia's mind races with frustration, unable to accept that the girl who once ranks at the very bottom of exams has caught up to her pace so quickly. She is convinced that Deculine must have secretly tutored the commoner in private despite denying it earlier in Burke, unable to see her own arrogance as she scorns Ephorine. After the chaos is cleaned, the class sits back down, and the professor explains that while everyone has attempted interference, they miss the easiest way to disrupt his spell. The true method lies not in attacking the spell itself, but in targeting the mana flow behind it, a technique called mana interference, which requires understanding the opponent's spell structure to disturb its energy. This approach comes with a major drawback since it only works if one memorizes many magic circle formulas in detail, making it impractical in fast-paced combat where quick barriers are more efficient. Despite this limitation, he insists that the semester will drill the concept into them, no matter the difficulty, because true mastery demands pain and effort. He then introduces the foundation of the technique, which involves recognizing central circuits within magic circles, as these vary based on whether the spell is destructive or supportive and also depend on the elemental attributes used. Identifying the opponent's central circuit grants a chance for interference, and once this skill becomes second nature, the broader application of mana interference becomes much easier. To demonstrate, he reveals the magic circle for Stormblade, a destructive spell with a circuit that ignites from the inside outward, then moves on to examples of supportive spells and others in succession, carefully breaking down their circuits while his students pay close attention, furiously scribbling notes to capture every detail. 2 full hours of non-stop explanation and demonstration pass before Deculine finally glances at the clock and declares dismissal, noting that while there is still material left uncovered, their earlier struggles during the practical and the exhausting cleanup have already eaten into too much class time. For now, the students are told to rest and reflect on what they have learned, with midterm exams approaching and an open practical scheduled before then, so Deculine warns them to study seriously and engrave the lessons into their hearts because they will matter later, before dismissing the class promptly since he refuses to work unpaid overtime. Though strangely, his students dislike how his lectures always end right on time, comparing it to being stopped halfway through a satisfying relief. Julie, as usual, absorbs little, while Ephorine sits deep in thought, sensing that she has taken a real step forward in her magic today. Her moment of quiet progress is ruined when Beck, the obnoxious snitch who always causes trouble, shows up again, sneering at the peasants and trying to stir conflict. He is the same rat who once drags Professor Lelin into their club just to spite them, furious that common-born students are outshining him. Ephorine, still in good spirits, plans to ignore him until he mocks her family, asking how a broke house with no wealth could possibly bribe the professor for favoritism, and even suggesting she is receiving private lessons from Deculine after hours. She angrily denies it, though his words strike a nerve. Nearby, Sylvia listens carefully, suspicion filling her mind, while Beck keeps pressing, claiming the professor must have gifted her the mana stone out of pity since she is nothing but a penniless orphan scraping by. Ephorine, trembling with fury, nearly snaps and is ready to beat his smug face in until Julie restrains her, reminding her that another punishment would ruin her career. This makes her recall Deculine's advice that a mage should stay cold and composed. With effort she forces herself to calm down, smiles bitterly, and thanks her friend for grounding her before pretending Beck does not exist, deciding instead to lead Julie away toward the cafeteria, though inside she still burns with the desire to put him in his place. From nearby, Sylvia continues to watch, re-evaluating the wild commoner girl who has just barely managed to restrain herself, realizing that although Ephorine appears calm, she still longs to teach Beck a harsh lesson. While she is muttering plans under her breath, she suddenly notices Sylvia herself waiting in an alleyway, who then steps forward, composed and without arrogance, asking if they can have a private word. Ephorine is puzzled by Sylvia's sudden invitation to talk and bluntly asks if she wants to fight again, saying she is not in the mood, but Sylvia ignores that and directly asks if she is secretly being tutored by Professor Deculine outside class. This naturally offends Ephorine, who sees it as yet another noble stirring trouble, since the rumor makes no sense given their terrible student-professor relationship, and she grows heated while Sylvia quietly studies her reaction. Once convinced the commoner is sincere, Sylvia turns to leave but first drops some pointed information, saying Deculane has not stepped inside a lab for 3 years since her father's death. This only makes Ephraim sneer and assume the man is still a useless fraud living off her father's genius. But Sylvia follows up by revealing that for the past 3 months the professor has been going to the lab daily, cleaning it, hiring an assistant, and even buying new magical equipment, which can only mean he is continuing serious research. This leaves Ephraim shaken as she immediately fears he is exploiting her late father's work, though she masks her unease and brushes it off, insisting it is none of her concern what the professor does in his lab. Sylvia, amused by her reaction, gives a cool farewell, leaving Ephraim alone with the disturbing thought of her father's legacy being tampered with. Several days later, the next lecture resumes outdoors, with the debutantes filing into the training field, confused about why class is held under the open sun until Beck deliberately bumps into one of Ephraim's commoner friends, nearly sparking a fight Julie wants to escalate, but this time Ephraim calms her down, urging restraint. The professor's commanding voice then calls for silence to begin the session, announcing that today will be the last practical before midterms, snapping his fingers to reveal a massive surprise as the coverings fall from the stands, exposing a packed crowd of spectators because this is going to be a public practical where every student will fight before countless onlookers, something the commoners have never experienced before. Deculane explains they will duel one another, showcasing at least 3 kinds of pure elemental magic, and though winning or losing is irrelevant, they will be judged on the quality of their combat, adherence to rules, and overall performance, with him personally recording each student's strengths and weaknesses to guide their improvement, while Professor Leland serves as official to ensure no serious injuries, making it clear they can fight without restraint. With no delay, he calls forward a nervous debutante named Eurojan, asking him to pick an opponent, who in turn chooses another random student. And once the two reach the stage, the professor gives the signal for the first bout to begin, marking the start of one fight after another, the duels flowing smoothly with surprisingly strong displays of magic, proving that while none of these debutantes match the brilliance of true prodigies, they each possess their own respectable talent. The professors watch closely from the sidelines, noting every move as the students clumsily adjust to real combat, their inexperience forcing them to concentrate harder on their magic. Soon, Sylvia lights up the arena with a devastating explosion, showing she is leagues ahead of her peers, while Beck and his cronies mock every commoner who loses, jeering that they should quit magic and work as his gardeners instead. Ephraim, though irritated, keeps calm and encourages her injured friend who limps off the stage. Then Professor Deculane calls on Beck, who smugly chooses Ephraim as his opponent. Instead of fear, she feels calm and eager, finally having the chance to shut him up and earn marks at the same time. Beck, still clinging to the rumor about her getting secret lessons, taunts her, but Ephraim cuts him down by calling out his pathetic attempt to imitate Deculane's style. Embarrassed in front of everyone, Beck squirms, and before he can recover, Ephraim lights the arena with green light, ready to prove his weakness. Beck attacks first, boasting he will send her to meet her dead parents, and though his quick strike knocks her back, she rises unscathed, much to his dismay. As he basks in the crowd's cheers, convinced of his dominance, reality hits hard when Ephraim summons a gooey green slime that forms into a massive fist and smashes him sky high before he crashes back down in tears, humiliated and shaken. She stands triumphantly over him, savoring the victory, while Beck insists she has just been lucky. The professor, however, is unimpressed that the duel ends so quickly because Beck collapses too easily, ruining the entertainment for the audience. Hearing his frustration, Ephraim steps forward again, reminding him she has only used one element so far, and to pass the practical she needs to display 3. Since her weak opponent has given her no chance to show her real ability, she asks for another match. To everyone's shock, she points straight at Deculane himself, announcing with a bold grin that she has already beaten the imitation and now wants to fight the original. Lelin is utterly shocked by what he hears, muttering in disbelief that Ephorine must be out of her mind, while the crowd around the arena erupts in chatter, thinking she has completely lost it. Sylvia furrows her brows, waiting to see how this plays out, while Ephorine herself stands unfazed, fully aware of how insane this challenge looks to everyone else, yet unwilling to let the rare opportunity slip away because deep down she has always dreamed of facing Decaleon in battle, even if she has to look reckless in the process. While others scoff, Wu Jin simply smiles and Lelin continues to spew insults, calling her a deranged child, yet the professor himself stays calm, brushing off the jeers and telling Lelin to relax, which only confuses the man further, until Wu Jin gives his answer. He accepts her challenge, reminding everyone that he has said any student is free to challenge him and no rules exist to prevent it, though he makes it clear that a professor can never go all out against a student, so he lays down conditions. He will not attack first, and if she can make him move from his spot even once, then she will win. Ephorine agrees immediately, her heart pounding as she steps forward, glowing green as her magic surges, feeling the weight of this long-awaited moment, knowing full well she is outmatched but determined to measure the gap between herself and the man she vows to surpass one day. When Wu Jin signals the start, she throws everything she has into it, forming a blazing fire circle that erupts into an explosion around him, which impresses even the composed professor, yet he remains still, arms crossed, and when the smoke clears, she is already pushing forward again, switching to earth magic, then following up with swirling flames, leaving Lelin gaping in shock and Sylvia leaning closer to see while the crowd marvels at her display. The professor, untouched inside her fiery sphere, shatters the spell effortlessly without moving an inch, prompting her to grit her teeth and launch a barrage of magic projectiles, only for him to calmly comment on her predictable patterns, pointing out that her larger attacks make her movements obvious. Then she suddenly realizes something is wrong. Her next spell fails, panic creeping in as she wonders if her circuit has broken before he explains that he has sealed her magic entirely. This infuriates her yet does not make her back down, as she believes she can still rely on her physical strength, raising her fist to fight him bare-handed until she sees his finger flick ever so slightly, and the next instant she is blasted across the arena, crashing hard and groaning in pain. He coolly observes how she has instinctively combined wind and fire with an earth-based dust explosion, her natural grasp of magic being undeniable, though he also knows that talent without control can only go so far. And what makes her feats possible is the rare vessel she possesses, the green bracelet allowing her to wield all elements, a gift others would envy. Wu Jin quietly thinks that if the real Deculain had witnessed her just now, even he might have been shaken, perhaps jealous, because if a virtuous named like Ephorine grows properly, she will lack nothing. As he approaches her fallen form, he admits the result is obvious but tells her that what she has shown is not bad at all, which moves her deeply since praise from him is rare. He then declares the public practical over and instructs the debutantes to prepare for their midterms, while the buzzing crowd whispers in awe about how unusual it is for Deculain to compliment anyone, all agreeing she has done far better than expected after her dull earlier match with Beck, much to Beck's annoyance. Still shaken but uplifted, Ephorine wonders if she has just been acknowledged, and when Julie helps her up, smiling and calling her amazing, the rest of their clubmates echo the sentiment, proudly declaring her their pride. Meanwhile, at the pier, Ganesha's eyes fix on a ship pulling into the dock, the one she has been expecting, where she warmly greets a man named Leo Carlos, who steps off first, followed by a woman who smiles faintly and greets her too. Ganesha welcomes her back and asks if she has missed her, to which Yuria teasingly replies she only missed her a little, though this woman is none other than Yuria, the island girl now possessed by Yuara, Wu Jin's ex-girlfriend. Ganesha warmly tells Yuria how much she has missed her, but Yuria jokingly complains that it hurts and calls it child abuse, making Ganesha quickly apologize. Yuria suddenly remembers the blinding light that swallowed her just before she got into the car, erasing everything and leaving her unconscious until she opened her eyes to find her original world gone. Instead, she sees Ganesha asking if Deculain truly plans to use a child like Yuara, saying she cannot go through with the job, while one of her men mocks her for accepting it, teasing that she only does so because she likes Deculane's face and pointing out the cancellation fee will be huge. As Yuria listens, she begins to realize the people, their voices, and the situation are all from the characters she once created. The very ones she stayed up many nights designing, now alive before her eyes. When Ganesha introduces herself to the child and asks if she is Yuria, Yuria understands it is really them, Ganesha and the red garnet adventurers. When she feels the warm breeze, smells the trees, and touches the textures of nature, she realizes this is real. She is inside the game itself, so she answers that her name is Yuara, and that is how Yuria becomes Yuara, one of her own creations. Later, Ganesha scolds Leo and Carlos for running around, and Yuria reminds herself that Ganesha is the world's strongest adventurer, making her the safest person to stay close to if she wants to survive until she finds her way home. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Wu Jin receives a package containing Lakalak's Eucline staff, a masterpiece crafted by Lakalak with the ability to store 500 mana and act as a support circuit. When he admires its beauty, his aesthetic sense trait activates, letting him appreciate its ironwood design, the strongest of magical woods, which not only gives it immense natural power but also an automatic learning function to help refine spells. It is both powerful and beautiful since its color can change to match the user's clothes. And holding it, Wu Jin recognizes that thanks to Eucline's bloodline, it can unleash powerful exorcism magic. Though its cost is 9 million elne, he thinks its value is far greater, equal to a legendary relic, just before Roy knocks to say dinner is ready. At the table, Wu Jin seems unsatisfied despite the elegant meal, though Yeriel explains she orders special dishes to help him recover energy. And Roy reports that the antiques Decolane has ordered and sold at auction have drawn so much attention that they cause trouble for the house, with every piece immediately bid on. Both he and Yeriel are amazed as if they are dreaming, the auction profits far exceeding expectations, enough to secure the estate's future for years. And Roy explains the lavish dinner is Yeriel's way of showing gratitude. Deculain only smiles and says the food is good, leaving her smug and satisfied, though he still embarrasses her by pointing out she is holding her knife wrong. Later, in his office, surrounded by piles of paperwork, Deculain sighs at the mess, while Wu Jin, in his own thoughts, stews in frustration over the pompous attitude of the original Deculain, especially after reviewing his old exam questions for the midterms, which are absurdly difficult, designed less to teach and more to flaunt his intellect at the student's expense, arrogance dripping from every line. Wu Jin, determined to be different, resolves to create fair but challenging questions that test skill, build confidence, and deepen understanding. As he sifts through the last box, he comes across a set of questions that stand out entirely from the rest. Unlike Deculane's, they spark curiosity and seem crafted with real care, leading Wu Jin to suspect they are written by Ephorine's father. Still difficult, but elegant. He uses comprehension magic to solve them and infuses his answers onto the exam paper, where glowing lights swirl into the shape of a hand and then a woman's face, revealing this is no ordinary test but a magical one that displays visual results when solved correctly, harmonizing elemental colors into a breathtaking spectacle. The perfect example of an exam on pure elemental magic. Though Wu Jin admires its brilliance, jealousy gnaws at him because he knows Deculain must have been aware of its perfection, and it is something he could never have devised himself, leaving him uneasy as he stares at the woman's image. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Adeline sits reading a letter from Elder Drazekdan of Bericht about the upcoming council meeting, where the issue of the Blood Shroud race will be discussed, noting how the stance has shifted due to resistance against suppressing them. And now, unexpectedly, Deculain himself is involved, dragging the matter into her department and extending its weight across all the professors connected to it. Adeline, chairwoman of the Magic Tower, is famous for her overwhelming magical power and seen as the strongest candidate to become the next Archmage, yet behind her fearsome reputation she has a surprisingly easygoing personality. She loves to eavesdrop on students and always seems to know the juiciest gossip, like Deculain's loud argument with Knight Yuli or how Professor Lelin fails his diet again. Though she jokes about it, her love for drama comes from being half fairy. which gives her both her whimsical nature and her unmatched magical ability. While she grumbles, she secretly enjoys days like this, remarking how strange it is that Deculine sides with the heretics. Once a month the professors gather before her, and as usual Deculine is absent, as if he believes himself above everyone else. This meeting turns serious when Professor Retlin announces that Lord Ruina will be attending. The very woman who once rivaled Deculine for chief professor before resigning due to his schemes and quietly living in the kingdom since. When Adeline asks if she plans to return, Retlin explains she will if offered a position, noting her achievements abroad and how her return could benefit the tower, even hinting at Deculine's suspicious ties, though he quickly clarifies it is not an accusation. Adeline says she will consider it, pleasing the other professors before dismissing them with a reminder to submit their exam questions. Once alone, she muses that Deculine has been acting oddly and that the exam he submits is far too refined to be his work, smirking as she thinks of teasing him. And the idea of his old rival Ruina making a comeback makes her anticipation even sweeter. Days later, during the midterm exam on pure elemental magic, the students are already in panic, whispering about how impossible Deculine's tests always are, some tempted to give up before starting, until Alan calms them by explaining the format. The exam lasts 10 days with a strict midnight deadline on the final Sunday, each student working alone in their assigned room, free to leave for other exams, food, or rest, but forbidden from taking the paper out. Most shocking of all, it is an open book test, which Julie immediately realizes means extreme difficulty. Ephraim is already miserable, groaning that Deculine never gives normal exams, but Alan adds one last detail. The professor promises that anyone who achieves a perfect score will receive a personal letter of recommendation signed under his name as chief professor, and the room falls silent because everyone knows how important this is. Advancing through mage ranks is no simple task, since the Archmage scale goes from rank 1 Eternal down to rank 11 Debutante, and promotions do not happen by just finishing courses or waiting out time. They require brutal promotion exams, so a recommendation letter from a rank 4 monarch like Deculine is basically a free pass, almost a guaranteed promotion. Instead of excitement, Ephraim looks annoyed because the thought of accepting help from her sworn enemy drains all her motivation until she suddenly thinks of turning it against him. What if she takes that letter and uses it to crush his pride, making him beg at her feet? The image makes her grin and suddenly she is fired up again. So when Julie catches her laughing to herself, she gives her a wary look. By the 4th day, however, Ephraim is completely drained. Dark circles under her eyes as the exam proves far tougher than expected, each question harder than the last yet brilliantly made. Even though solving them is painful, the deep satisfaction of cracking an answer keeps her going and makes her wonder if Deculine has truly created such an exam. Though it hurts, she cannot stop because of the joy of solving them. Still determined to get that recommendation letter, though stuck on one question that fries her brain to the point she decides to get fresh air. At the same time, Sylvia rests in the garden, stiff from spending 30 hours on a single problem, recalling how at first she dismisses the offer of a recommendation letter as dramatic, since anyone capable of acing this exam would not need help with promotions anyway. Deep down she wants a perfect score, not for grades or the letter but for herself, because each question is like a masterpiece that expands her understanding, and she believes solving them all will make her grow as a mage. When Ephraim spots her, curious about her progress, they accidentally blurt out the same question, asking how many problems the other has solved, and freeze in embarrassment. Sylvia admits she is on number 8, shocking Ephraim, who is still stuck on number 7, though Sylvia clarifies she has not solved hers yet. While Ephraim doubts it, she lets it go, asking if Sylvia is leaving, which Sylvia denies, saying she is just on break. As night falls, the students of the tower remain buried in their exams while Wu Jin senses a great upheaval approaching, confirmed by a newspaper reporting that Emperor Krebame is now in critical condition, marking the beginning of a larger storm. Wu Jin cannot stop thinking about the news that Emperor Krebame is now in critical condition, and this troubles him deeply. For the Emperor has always been a man of balance and gentle rule, carefully maintaining harmony between the divine and imperial powers. never forcing cruel or oppressive policies upon the blood shrouds, always choosing tolerance over violence. While his illness is grave, the greater worry is not his passing but who will sit on the throne after him, for the new monarch already crowned is nothing like him, and Wujin whispers the name, Sofian Yekatere August von Gibrain, knowing beyond doubt that the entire world will soon change under this ruler. Dusk falls over the academy as the last day of the midterm finally arrives, and his marathon exam has already claimed countless dropouts, yet something strange happens. Regardless of grades, the students begin treating simple survival as an achievement, proudly boasting about completing the test as if finishing it is itself a badge of honor, and instead of celebrating with cheers or rest once it ends, most sit in silence, quietly reflecting on the lessons learned. Their reactions are so unusual that it catches the attention of everyone in the Magic Tower, even professors who now feel drawn to see the infamous exam themselves. While the exam halls empty one after another, there are still 2 students clinging to the final question. Number 8, Ephraim and Sylvia. Ephraim stares at it with growing irritation, drained and pale like a walking corpse after too much coffee and too little rest. Yet she refuses to quit, telling herself that if she can focus just a bit longer, she might see what the question is truly asking. Meanwhile, in the hall, Wu Jin and Alan wait until a sudden eruption of magical light bursts from one exam room, shocking Alan, though Wu Jin already knows what it means. When he steps inside and quietly closes the door, he faces Sylvia and tells her that he has expected she would be the one to solve it, congratulating her as he gazes at the sight before him. Her exam room has transformed into a breathtaking masterpiece, with air swirling in luminous patterns, colors shimmering with magical essence, so dazzling that Wu Jin himself, the creator of the test, can hardly believe it. For even he cannot conjure something so beautiful, knowing his own limits. He thinks back to the man Kim Woo Jin, who once longed to be an artist, yearning to touch hearts with his work yet never possessing the raw skill, still pursuing that dream until his aesthetic sense fused with this last question. Now, watching Sylvia's manifestation, both Wu Jin the failed artist and Wu Jin the teacher feel quiet peace. So he tells her again she has done well and even thanks her, leaving her stunned before stepping away. While Sylvia lets the radiant light swirl through her fingers, realizing in her heart that she does not need to become an archmage, for magic itself is already beautiful enough. Back in the corridor, Alan enters Ephraim's room and tells her that time is over, and though she says it is a shame, he praises her, reminding her that until the very last moment she is one of only 2 still battling the hardest problem. When she asks if Sylvia has finished, he nods, making her mutter monster with jealousy but also with respect. She realizes that all her earlier thoughts about recommendation letters and about Deculane's pride have disappeared, leaving only her pure curiosity and hunger for knowledge. She decides then and there to keep solving the questions even after the exam ends, smiling at Alan, who admires her persistence and promises to keep cheering her on. Finally, the marathon exam is over, and exhausted Ephraim wanders into the garden, her body heavy with fatigue. Wishing she has finished everything so she could feel the sense of accomplishment, but instead all she sees in her mind is a lonely graffiti-marked door and a cold bed waiting for her. Then 3 shadows appear, Julie and their clubmates, calling her name, inviting her warmly to join them for food, saying it is normal to unwind together after an exam. Ephraim feels unexpectedly touched, though Julie teases her, asking why she looks so dumbfounded, and when she holds back tears, Julie tells her she admires her toughness, before joking that since they are late because of her, she will have to pay. The remark snaps Ephraim out of her sentimental mood, making her flare up and yell that she never agrees to that, but deep inside she is comforted by the gesture. A few days after the final exam, Ephraim finally solves the one last question she had skipped before, and as the radiant light shimmers before her, she smiles softly, her eyes bright with satisfaction and joy at her accomplishment, quietly whispering how beautiful it is. At that moment, Julie's familiar voice comes from behind the door, asking if she is ready, and wiping away a small tear, Ephraim replies with a gentle smile that she will be out soon. Later she meets Julie at a small cafe near the academy where, with the exams finally over, they speak openly, sharing relief yet acknowledging that the peace will not last, cherishing these calm days as precious. Ephraim admits she is thankful she has not given up on the exam and considers it one of her most meaningful magical experiences. But Julie suddenly interrupts her thoughts with a sparkle in her eyes, asking if she has heard the news. Ephraim is startled until Julie explains in a mysterious tone that it is about Professor Decoulain, pointing toward the sky as she reveals he has been summoned to Sky Island, a legendary floating isle that hovers 1,500 meters above ground, a marvel of magical technology and a sanctuary for eccentric scholars obsessed with research, celebrated as a neutral place of knowledge and freedom. Julie explains that Decoulain's exam has gained so much attention for its difficulty and creativity that he is invited to lecture there. Shocked, Ephraim listens as Julie continues, describing how Sky Island is the most advanced place of magical learning in the world, where Decoulain is now expected to present his ideas behind the midterm exam. The scene shifts to the isle itself, where Decoulain, surprisingly pleased that his exam has brought him such recognition, realizes the lecture boosts his reputation, earns him 30 extra mana points, and even comes with a generous payment equal to 1 billion Korean won, making him think this path could be worth pursuing. Setting aside the exam paper, he steps into the grand lecture hall where professors like Leland and many mages from the Royal University are already present, and standing tall at the podium he greets the audience calmly, introducing himself as the chief professor of the Imperial University's Magic Tower, a king-rank mage and master of the elements, stating that today's lecture will cover the midterm exam of the Magic Tower University and last 2 hours, beginning with a short explanation of pure elemental forces. Just as he starts, Principal Adeline is heard whispering to someone nearby, asking if they have seen the exam questions, only to receive a cold reply that they must have been plagiarized, for there is no way Decoulain could have produced something so brilliant on his own. The speaker turns out to be Rowena von Schlott-McQueen, a mage who once competed for the role of chief professor but lost to Decoulain, and though whispers of doubt linger, the lecture continues smoothly as Decoulain works hard to make the concepts clear by referencing past teachings from the Magic Tower, presenting with a fresh, organized style that quickly engages the audience. When he reaches question 6, Principal Adeline raises her hand, draws a magic circle in the air, and asks how magic number 6 could be combined with destructive elements. And though Decoulain suspects her playful nature and underlying doubts about the exam, he calmly modifies her circle with a straight line and explains that adding a linear core circuit is enough, leaving Adeline surprised and thankful. Her curiosity does not stop as she fires off more difficult questions with childlike eagerness, while he answers each one fluently, though some attendees grow irritated by her interruptions until she finally falls silent. With 10 minutes left, Decoulain announces he will not have time to explain the final question, and the audience's eyes shift toward Adeline, who pouts but stays quiet, only for Rowena to suddenly ask if question 8 is really written by him, her voice sharp with old bitterness, reminding Decoulain of how he had once expelled her from the tower. When she presses him again, the room fills with whispers of plagiarism, yet Decoulain replies coldly that drawing inspiration is common, then releases a surge of mana that creates a breathtaking magical vision in the air, declaring it his own original creation and entirely different from the disputed exam problem. When he asks Rowena if that settles her doubts, her face twists in frustration though she has no way to challenge him further, leaving the lecture to end with his mana boosted by 30 points. Later, as Decoulain walks away reflecting on how his history with Rowena is bound to remain troubled and sensing future conflict despite the peaceful end, he suddenly freezes as a mysterious woman approaches, her sharp gaze filled with killing intent as though she has hated him for years. And though her face looks strangely familiar, the hostility in her eyes makes him mutter uneasily to himself, wondering who she is and why she looks ready to strike him. The two of them stand in uneasy silence, their faces tense as they look at each other until Decoulain finally recalls who she is, an old classmate from university, and steps forward with a hand extended, greeting her warmly and remarking on how long it has been, but Scott frowns in confusion and says they are not close enough for him to be using her name so casually. Unbothered, he replies that if she prefers, he can call her Princess Maho, then asks if she truly does not care about his ties to Charlotte, stressing that what matters now is protecting Maho, the one under Charlotte's care, because with Emperor Krebame near death, the story will soon shift, putting countless named characters in danger as new events unfold. This time the one he has to safeguard is Maho, a character he himself has designed, destined to become a key figure who will guide the main story in its later stages. Though her tangled heritage means her life is always at risk since she is second in line for the Duchy of Uran throne and third in the royal succession of the Kingdom of Ryuk, living in the Empire under the cover of study until the Emperor's death forces her out and leaves her vulnerable. Slot scowls, accusing him of still knowing how to make others face hard truths, but Dekulin suddenly presents her with a crystal orb, explaining calmly that it is nothing to fear and that it will serve as her lifeline, confusing Charlotte, who later realizes it is a communication crystal and remembers his instruction to use it once she decides her path. Soon after, she shouts at him in anger, asking if he really expects her to depend on someone like him, to which he replies coldly that there is no time left and if she rejects his help, the choice is hers, before walking away and leaving her torn and weary, until a gentle voice behind her comments that she looks unwell. It is Princess Maho, the very one Dekulin has spoken of. Though Slot quickly assures her she is fine and that Maho should not worry, the princess admits sadly that her brother's men will soon come to either manipulate her or erase her, and while she does not care about the throne, she confesses she is afraid, explaining that she has fled under the guise of education but has found refuge in the Empire, though she knows the new emperor will not allow her peace, so they have to leave quickly. Seeing Charlotte's fatigue, Maho hands her a suitcase of savings, explaining softly that she knows Charlotte lacks the money to hire mercenaries for their journey. Charlotte tries to refuse the money, insisting she can handle the cost herself, but Maho turns away and tells her not to bear the burden alone, saying the money is for everyone and will not be wasted. Hearing that, Charlotte stops arguing and quietly says she understands, then admits she plans to use it to hire more mercenaries for their journey, though she feels the idea might sound improper. Just then, outside the window, a dark figure stands watching, and when Charlotte senses the danger, she rushes over, throws open the window and shouts, demanding to know who it is, but the figure flees without a word, leaving her with a grim expression as she mutters that things are growing dangerous and refusing help will only worsen the situation. Meanwhile, at the Dekulin estate, Dekulin sits in his study reading when Yariel enters playfully, teasing him for reading so much and noting he never used to be such a book lover, then adds he should at least answer his sister. As she wanders around, she mentions the rumor of his well-paid lecture at the floating island, but Dekulin calmly says he will not give her a single coin, startling her since she has not asked for money, so she quickly shifts to say that an official document has arrived, requesting permission for new students of the Magic Tower University to visit their territory, Hidakane, for a field trip. Before she can explain further, Dekulin flatly refuses, and when Yariel asks in disbelief if he has really said no, reminding him to at least think about it, he imagines the students getting drunk and vomiting all over the estate, which he will not tolerate, so he refuses again, leaving Yariel baffled as she pulls out the document and urges him not to be so stubborn, pointing out it is a chance to promote their magic to freshmen and is not without reward. He raises his hand and tells her to leave. Though confused, she presses him once more to at least look at it, but his expression turns serious and he firmly orders her out, and while irritated, she reluctantly agrees, muttering that he is still as stubborn as ever. After she leaves, Dekulin waits until he is sure he is alone, then pulls out a crystal orb to contact Charlotte, telling her that despite his reluctance they have no time and must leave immediately, asking for her help. As he spreads a map across the table with his mana, he explains that Princess Maho has only one escape path, dangerous but safest because of that, and when Charlotte asks what it is, he answers calmly, the Crevice Ravine, making her flinch as she reminds him it is saturated with demonic energy and deadly. He snaps back, asking if she really thinks safe routes will keep them alive, urging her to trust him and insisting they will survive the ravine. The Crevice Ravine is a dangerous mountain region thick with dark energy, often compared to a den of demons, with rumors that real demons sometimes appear there, and because the area is not claimed by any nation, it is free from laws or restrictions, yet it is still the only possible escape for Princess Maho, as once they cross it, the duchy will be within reach. Charlotte, doubtful, reminds Decoulin that while they had once considered its strategic value, that was before the Euclane family became involved, but Decoulin calmly reassures her that he will personally guide them, shocking her. And when she asks why he would go to such lengths or what he stands to gain, he leans back and replies that he values politics, has greater foresight than her, and only cares about Maho's survival because it benefits his family and lands, insisting it is not kindness, but business. After that, Charlotte asks the meeting place, and he says firmly, they will meet in 3 days at the entrance of the ravine, warning that if she cannot even reach it, they are not worth saving. Charlotte answers coldly that she understands and hopes his skill matches his words, and a system panel appears showing a new quest, Liberation. 3 days later, in Hidakain, Decoulin's capital, newcomers marvel at the beauty, calling it a tourist city with great food and leisure, unlike anywhere else. And though Decoulin has always refused to host gatherings there before, this time he agrees because of its closeness to the ravine, just a few hours by horse, which will allow Maho to retreat unnoticed. When Yeriel teases him about the sudden change, reminding him he once called visitors filthy, he stays silent, lost in thought, then asks where the guests will stay, and Yeriel says she has reserved an entire floor of the Hidakain Romance Hotel, with standard rooms for 4 but private ones available for a fee, which he approves. She laughs, saying it is natural, and as Lord and Professor he lays out rules, allowing fun but warning in a cold voice that anyone who disrespects his estate will regret it. Afterward, he begins shaping Hidakain into a strategic base, and when Yeriel boasts about their mages, he silently observes with his clairvoyance and divine sense, seeing golden auras around talents, and immediately orders higher pay for 2 while firing another, causing confusion. As time slips by, night falls and the group gathers around a great bonfire, professors sitting in neat rows as if taking a test. Sylvia is the first to present, sending a firework into the sky that bursts into glowing magical flowers, filling the night with color and drawing admiration, earning her perfect 10s from 2 professors who praise its beauty. Meanwhile, Julie sighs in frustration, complaining silently about being given homework even on trips, and Ephraim laughs dryly in agreement before it is her group's turn, where she starts to explain how they have mixed destructive and harmony magic. But the professor cuts her off and tells her to just fire it, so she does, and the sky lights up just as brilliantly as Sylvia's, with students cheering in awe, though the old professor frowns and gives only 6 points, while the female professor goes lower with 4, which angers Julie. But Ephraim stops her, saying it is fine, until Decoulin suddenly declares their work a perfect 10, calling it a flawless balance of magic, leaving the professors shocked and Ephraim herself stunned. After the fireworks end, she prepares to leave and thinks about Charlotte's safety when Decoulin appears, asking why she is out so late, and she confronts him, demanding to know why he has treated her so harshly during the hearing, the club, and even today, wondering if it is because of her father. But he mounts his horse and tells her to find the answers herself, reminding her she is no longer a child, leaving her clenching her teeth in anger before shouting after him that she will apply as his assistant, determined to uncover the truth behind her father's death and swearing to surpass him one day. Though her heart aches as she stands alone in the night wiping tears before heading back. Decoulin, meanwhile, questions whether she will truly follow him, admitting to himself that his role as a villain is not yet complete, and even doubting whether the original Decoulin had wronged her father, fearing he might be doomed if it is true. Later, he reaches the rendezvous point, tells his horse to return to the stables because of the ominous energy, and waits until Charlotte arrives with Princess Maho and only 2 injured guards left standing, relieved they have survived the difficult journey. Decoulin arrives at the meeting point and finds Charlotte's group with Princess Maho, who looks badly injured. He bows politely and introduces himself as Decoulin von Grahan Eucline, head of the Imperial Royal Magic Academy, He declares that from then on he will lead the way to ensure her escape, which makes Princess Maho immediately thank him. Noticing how exhausted she seems, he comments on the tough journey they must have faced. Charlotte suddenly steps forward and hands him a letter taken from some mercenaries. As he reads it, his expression hardens before crushing it in his hand in disgust, calling it vile and remarking that their enemies know no limits. When asked if he will be fine, he calmly assures them everything will go smoothly under his guidance, though Maho looks uncertain. After this, he orders them to move out, leading them into the crevice where the air grows thick with demonic energy. The others cover their noses while he alone walks unaffected. Maho quietly asks Charlotte what the letter had contained since his expression had darkened. Deculin admits it reveals they are being chased by 37 assassins and someone named Dianant. This immediately makes Charlotte's face turn grim as she explains that Dianant is a hybrid of demon and spirit. He is nearly impossible to defeat with either magic or physical attacks and far more dangerous than the assassins. What makes it worse is that he is created through a contract using a forbidden dark ritual known as demon invocation. This requires a human body and a demon's horn as sacrifices, an act so vile that only the most depraved would dare attempt it. This leaves her to bitterly question whether such people think themselves worthy of ruling a kingdom. Yet the only hope they have now is Deculin himself, heir to the Eucline bloodline renowned for its demon-exorcising abilities. At that moment, a system prompt appears explaining that those with Eucline blood can purify demonic miasma and convert it into mana of the highest tier. This means that while others suffer in this cursed ravine, Deculin only grows stronger. The deeper they go, the thicker the demonic energy becomes, truly confirming why the crevice is known as a den of demons. It is unbearable for ordinary people but empowering for him. What is deadly to others turns into a great advantage for Deculin. Surrounded by such heavy demonic energy, even for a short time, his mana quality rises to the 4th tier. This matters greatly since even one level makes a huge difference in a mage's strength. There are 10 levels in total, with most commoners at levels 9 or 10. Those who reach level 7 can already attempt becoming knights or mages. From level 5 upward the numbers drop sharply, with only a few across the continent ever reaching level 3 or 4. Level 1 is only symbolic, tied to divinity, and no human has ever achieved it. Even at level 2 only 4 people across the continent hold it. Jekdan of Bercht, the Imperial Guardian Knight, Gefrid, the Archmage Demakan, and the Chancellor Adeline, the headmaster of the Royal Academy of Magic. Deculin narrows his eyes, calculating that with his current level 4 quality, someone like Dianant is manageable, provided nothing unexpected occurs. Behind him Charlotte's voice breaks the silence, urging him to move faster. Calmly Deculin replies that she is letting her urgency cloud her judgment, warning that rushing carelessly risks demonic contamination. Though Charlotte's face falls, Princess Maho softly tugs her sleeve, comforting her by saying everything will be fine. This touches Charlotte, who thinks to herself how remarkable it is that the princess, though surely more frightened than anyone, still cares for her people. She silently vows to protect her at any cost. Suddenly, Maho points ahead, shouting that she sees something, and a swarm of bat-like demons swoops toward them. They are weak individually, but dangerous in numbers. This prompts Charlotte to unsheath her sword and say the real battle has begun. Deculin steps forward, telling her to leave it to him. With his object manipulation, he unleashes a storm of razor-sharp stones that shoot through the air at deadly speed. The stones rip the demons apart and their bodies drop like autumn leaves before they can reach the group. Turning back calmly, Deculin urges them onward, reminding them time is short. The group follows in awe, praising his strength and noting how easily he has wiped out such a horde. They continue, and every monster that appears is dispatched instantly by Deculin with just a flick. One guard remarks that only weak creatures have shown up so far and wonders why no serious threats have appeared. Suddenly, tense footsteps echo from above the cliff and a sneering assassin appears, mocking their awareness. Soon dozens of assassins reveal themselves, having waited all afternoon to ambush them. The assassin sneers, convinced they already know their fate. But Deculain remains calm and orders Charlotte to take Princess Maho to the Eucline Principality. When Charlotte, shocked, asks what will happen to him, he replies without hesitation that worrying for his safety is pointless. Furious, she calls him unbearably arrogant, yet he only points toward the assassins and raises his wand. He unleashes a massive explosion that wipes them out instantly as sharp stones tear through their bodies like lightning, leaving them drenched in blood. While Charlotte is stunned, Deculain asks if she is ready to act with resolve, telling her to escape at once. Charlotte turns to the princess, urging her to leave, but Maho points to the cliff where a new figure emerges from the carnage. Cloaked in suffocating mana and radiating terrifying power, he gazes down at them with absolute confidence. Alarmed, Maho curses under her breath, but Deculain remains steady. He repeats that Charlotte must take her to the Duchy of Urin. When Charlotte objects, insisting he cannot face such an enemy alone, a swordsman vows to help Deculain and urges her to go. Struggling with guilt, Charlotte hesitates until Deculain reassures her she owes him no sorrow. He says only that Princess Maho must repay Eucline once her power returns, promising to summon magical constructs to escort them and pressing her to leave quickly. Gritting her teeth, Charlotte grabs the princess and flees, vowing they will meet again in Urin. Lesser assassins give chase, mocking that the women will not get far, only for Deculain to cut them off coldly, warning they should worry about themselves. The cloaked figure turns his attention to him, accusing him of arrogance. He mocks that Deculain thinks to defeat a physical body with mere constructs and claims that in this demonic land spells and mana will fail. He asks what Deculain could possibly do. Though his confidence borders on madness, Deculain silently notes that while the man is right about ordinary mages, the Eucline bloodline is different. His mana quality and regeneration have risen, his constructs layered with enchantments during the journey, making this battle possible. Suddenly, one construct appears above the man, launching a stone projectile that slices his head clean off at blinding speed, yet disturbingly the body does not fall. Knowing a single strike is not enough, Deculain unleashes a relentless storm of razor-sharp stones, shredding the monster's body apart piece by piece. Mogangxiel tries to counter with twisted dark magic, only for Deculain to dispel it easily. Behind him the swordsman voices concern, noting the creature's sluggish movements but urging Deculain to keep focus. With burning determination, Deculain resolves not to stop until the monster is truly dead. Dozens more stone projectiles spin into existence before flying in a brutal barrage that tears Mogangxiel into hundreds of fragments before his body can regenerate. His agonized screams echo through the ravine before fading into silence as the last shard pierces his head, ending the fight. The swordsman praises Deculain's strength in awe. Elsewhere, Charlotte finally cuts down the assassins pursuing her and rushes back to the princess's side, calling out in worry and finding Maho collapsed, pale and trembling. The princess weakly claims she is fine, though Charlotte immediately recognizes the early signs of demonic energy poisoning. She urges her to endure a little longer and assures her they are close to safety. Suddenly, a familiar voice speaks. When Maho turns, she sees her grandfather Girand, Minister of Internal Affairs of the Urin Empire. Relief washes over her as he approaches and apologizes that all they could do was wait. While Maho gently reassures him that she understands and even feels grateful, he turns to Charlotte to ask who she is. With a respectful bow, she introduces herself as the princess's escort. Girand nods, calls her Lady Charlotte, and thanks her deeply for ensuring Maho's safe arrival. He asks if she managed the escort alone, to which Charlotte, with a sad look, explains others had helped. She glances back at the ravine they escaped before asking Girand to wait for them longer. He agrees, and so they stay from morning until dusk, but no one appears, only the long, silent road glowing under the crimson sunset. With unease in her voice, Maho asks if Professor Deculain will be all right. Though Charlotte stays quiet, burdened by the knowledge of how much he risked, Girand places a hand on Maho's shoulder and gently says it is time to move on. As the group enters the city gate, glancing back with lingering hope, their waiting is finally rewarded when Deculain appears, walking toward them slowly. His voice carries clearly as he remarks that the princess has arrived safely after all. Ron scratches his head and admits they barely survived, while the two girls, overjoyed, run to greet him under the fading light as if reuniting for the first time. After defeating the assassins and bringing Princess Maho to safety, Decoulain quickly bids farewell, saying he will return soon. When Charlotte, startled, asks if he shouldn't at least rest, he brushes the dust from his coat and replies calmly, "There is no need." He adds that she can hear the details later from John, then walks away, leaving Charlotte and the princess watching him silently. Charlotte's mind swirls with doubts, for she had assumed Decoulain only caused trouble, yet he risked his life to protect them. When she stretches out her hand, calls his name, and softly thanks him with a smile, he responds coldly that he cannot shake hands with someone covered in blood. Stung, she grits her teeth in frustration as he continues walking into the sunlight. She calls again, cheerfully this time, telling him to travel safely and promising to repay him one day. Maho also waves and calls him Professor. He gives no reply, only a brief wave before leaving, triggering a system prompt that awards him 4 shop coins and 30 mana points for completing the mission. Later, at the minister's residence, Charlotte enters anxiously, unsure what awaits her, wondering if the Duchy of Urin might reject them or if another scheme is at play. Reason tells her betrayal would have happened earlier. As the minister sits beside her, telling her to remain calm, he reveals the Grand Duke has chosen Maho as his successor. He explains that unlike ordinary dukes tied to the royal family, a Grand Duke's house is independent. Charlotte is stunned and asks if the princess will truly become the next Grand Duchess. The minister confirms it, saying the Grand Duke likely decided even before Maho's letter. He adds that the Grand Duke distrusted his nephew and stresses that only the Grand Duke, himself, and Charlotte know of this secret. Though Charlotte nods, she feels uneasy. She recalls how Maho had barely survived a succession struggle yet is now suddenly heir to a grand duchy. Urgently she asks if anyone else knows, and the minister says no, that even he just heard minutes earlier. She accepts but carries lingering doubt. Her thoughts return to Decoulain's words that he only wanted her and the princess to survive because their survival would benefit his family. He had warned her not to overthink it and to repay Eucline once Maho gained power. Charlotte wonders if he had already foreseen this outcome, his intellect and foresight far ahead of hers. Though she once brushed off his words as empty arrogance, she now questions if he had truly seen everything from the start and planned it carefully. Darkly she mutters that he really is a monster, while unable to deny the truth of his actions. She sighs faintly and smiles softly, uncertain if he has returned safely. At that same moment, Decoulain lies in his warm bed, waking after only 2 hours of rest. Looking at the not yet risen sun, he dresses, reflecting that his steel-like body erases all fatigue with little sleep. Though the day before was grueling, he is already fully recovered. He forces himself to rise while thinking about testing his control over objects by willpower alone, a trait modern people would envy. He pauses, feeling something stir within him, sighing and wishing he had trained this way long ago. Endlessly, without pause, always pushing past weaknesses. He wonders if living on the edge of danger shaped him but realizes discipline, will, and resilience truly define his life. Bitterly he recalls his ex-girlfriend's look of boredom before she left him. He had asked if something was wrong and she said nothing and walked away. He barely reacted, lost in meaningless distractions. He thinks that if he had been like his current self, maybe Kim Woojin would never have left. Again he sighs at even the wish for more sleep in this world where 22 hours drag endlessly. Meanwhile, at the harbor, students returning to the capital laugh about their trip, regretting leaving and dreaming of bringing their families next time. In a narrow alley, Ganesha hides nervously with children thrilled by the many wizards, new recruits of the magic tower. When Yuria asks why they are hiding, Ganesha forces a smile, claiming it is only because of the crowd. Another child mutters her actions seem suspicious. She glances toward the station gate and curses when she sees Decoulain appear. She realizes his timing is terrible after her last mission, though she cannot deny his strikingly handsome face. As he passes, he mutters that the crowd is less suffocating than the alley and says he will step out. Startled, Ganesha cries out in panic and draws his attention. She curses as she realizes she has been discovered. When she looks back, she sees Yuria frozen, staring at Decoulain in shock as buried memories surge back. 8 years they once shared tears. He is supposed to be just a game character, yet she remembers him so vividly. Dekulane too stares, struck by how much she resembles Yuara, whose radiant smile once carried him through countless hardships. Both are frozen, locked in silence, as if the entire world has stopped around them.